Good afternoon, everybody. This is the afternoon session on January 1st. Wow, that seems like a long time ago now.
So long.
On June 1st, 2017, Carla, please call the roll.
Fish.
Here.
Saltzman. Udaly.
Here.
Fritz. Wheeler.
Here. Could you please read the one and only item for today, please?
Okay. Item 609, establish a goal to meet 100% of community-wide energy needs and renewable energy by 2050.
Colleagues, I'd like to make a motion to introduce a substitute resolution.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second on a substitute resolution. At this point, I'd like to read some, well, I'll say they're brief talking points, but they really aren't. Some medium-length talking points, and then I'm going to invite Michael Armstrong up to walk us through the substitute resolution. So first of all, obviously, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. It's excellent to see the strong and continued interest in what I believe is the most important global issue that we currently face. Portland and Multnomah County have demonstrated that we can significantly reduce carbon pollution while also strengthening our economy, creating more equitable and just communities, even while our population continues to rapidly grow. These things go hand in hand. We've proven that. Most of our action has been through the framework of our joint city-county climate action plan, which was recently recognized by the global organization C40 as being the best and the strongest climate action plan in the world. As one of the world's most inspiring and innovative cities tackling climate change, we're here today to renew our commitment. We're committed to a bold new agenda. The years ahead, I believe, will be the most pivotal years in the fight against climate change and for climate justice. The Climate Action Plan Progress Report released earlier this year shows some incredibly good results. We're dramatically moving the needle on our environmental sustainability and climate justice goals. This is the result of sustained action by businesses, individuals, utilities, community organizations, and of course, through public policy. But we need to be even bolder in order to accomplish our goals. The City of Portland is poised to establish a goal to meet all of Portland and Multnomah County's community-wide energy needs with renewable energy by 2050, and all electricity from renewable sources by the year 2035. And this morning, Multnomah County unanimously passed their resolution establishing this goal. We're hearing from people all across the country that our work on this is already inspiring similar conversations in their communities. The resolution before you now, and the resolution that Multnomah County passed this morning, goes beyond establishing these new goals and outlines how our community can intentionally and equitably move to a 100% renewable energy future. It ensures that we're setting out on a just transition. These guidelines for a just transition are the result of an incredible amount of collaboration, and we will certainly need to continue to refine and calibrate in the coming months, years, and decades to make sure we stay on the right path. The city and the county will remain committed to partnering with our energy utilities as they help us accelerate the transition to renewable energy and minimize dependence on fossil fuels. And we'll prioritize community-based development of environmental infrastructure like the June Key Delta Center, as well as community-based development of renewable energy infrastructure. By making investments in community-facing organizations to build capacity to lead such development, we help to ensure that economic, social, and environmental benefits are led and shared by low-income populations and communities of color. All Portlanders and residents of Multnomah County will be impacted by climate change, but communities that already face existing socioeconomic and health inequities will be the most severely impacted by these risks, including children, older adults, people of color, and people living in poverty. And such communities will therefore require investments in resilience that is proportionate and accountable to these more severe risks. No matter which way the winds are blowing in DC, our community has always continued to innovate and implement ambitious new policies to achieve a low-carbon pollution future. Now our climate leadership is needed more than ever. As the federal administration attempts to set our nation back decades, we're going to stand together, firm, and we're going to strengthen our resolve. With a clear vision for the future, we can avoid being left to the whims of fate. Thank you to my colleagues for sponsoring and helping to craft this resolution. And thank you too to Northwest Natural, Pacific Power, PGE, and hundreds of other stakeholders that have already been working with us to help shape this keystone policy. Also, as I'm sure you're aware by now, President Trump has decided to pull the United States out of the Paris Climate Agreement, so I'll be introducing an amendment committing us to the Paris Accord. With that, I'd like to call up Michael Armstrong to walk everybody through the substitute resolution, and then we have a panel of invited guests that we'd like to have come up. And then, of course, we open up the opportunity for everybody to have their say as well. Good afternoon, Michael. And if you could just state your name again for the record and for the redundancy, because we like that.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Michael Armstrong with the city's Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. So I'll first describe the general content of the resolution, and I'll specifically call attention to the differences between what was filed last week and the substitute that you have in front of you this afternoon.
That's great. Thanks.
So in general terms, this resolution establishes new goals that extend and accelerate the city's commitment to renewable energy and specifically responding to climate change. As the mayor noted, the timing is quite auspicious given the federal administration's announcement earlier today. I got a phone call from USA Today this afternoon asking if the federal move changes Portland's commitment to climate change, and I suggested that they should tune into City Council this afternoon and they could judge for themselves. So there are people watching. All right, so.
There you go.
There we go.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So the Climate Action Plan includes a number of objectives that address energy use. You've got three here in front of you, and these are sort of the big ones to start off with. The first is to reduce total energy use in buildings, so energy efficiency investments. The second is to make sure that as we add new buildings, new homes, we're making sure they are as energy efficient as possible. And it's clear that those are building blocks. We've got to do the efficiency, and that gets us then to the third objective, which is to supply 50% of all energy used in buildings from renewable resources. So the resolution in front of you now would essentially both accelerate that goal and really extend it. So it's not simply energy used in buildings, but that it's all energy. And so the big change there is bringing in transportation as well. So the resolution proposes two goals, and the mayor laid these out: 100% renewable electricity by 2035, and then by 2050, 100% renewable energy. And so that's all energy, including for transportation, including energy we currently use through natural gas. To get to those ambitious goals, we need to create a compact, connected city. This is our comprehensive plan. This is how we're going to grow. Walkable neighborhoods, well connected by transit, pedestrian networks, bicycle networks. We've got to have the shape of urban form that lets us get around easily without relying on single occupancy vehicles. We also have to deliver energy efficiency everywhere we can get it. I already referred to buildings, industrial processes as well, more efficient vehicles, appliance standards, you name it. We've got to deliver on these building blocks that will then position us to move our energy supply from fossil fuel-based to renewable energy-based. So once we've done what we can on urban form and efficiency, then we move into energy supply. And so, essentially here, this is the resolution. Convert our electricity supplies to renewables. That both means adding wind, solar, some of the forms of energy I think we've become accustomed to thinking of as renewable, but it also is going to require real changes in how we manage the grid, how we deal with issues like storage, demand response. We're going to have to get a lot more sophisticated to make 100% renewable energy supply work for electricity. So ambitious, the goal for that is 2035. Then by 2050, we're bringing in all energy use. So transportation is the really big one there, but it also includes industrial processes, you name it, all the other ways in which we use energy. And so for transportation, the clear opportunity is to convert to electric vehicles. Once we've gotten what we can out of changing mode split, let's walk, let's bike, let's take transit everywhere we can, then let's electrify our vehicles or power them with renewable fuels. And so in some cases there may be biofuels that work, in some cases there may be renewable gas that works, but we need to convert all of our transportation to renewable fuels, and then we need to do our best to develop sources of renewable gas and substitute that for the remaining natural gas that we're still using. And that'll be a tall order because we don't currently have sources of biogas to match our current levels of natural gas use. So that is a challenge that we'll need to keep working on. One good example of this, though, is a project that you reviewed and gave the green light to just recently, which is utilizing the biogas that's produced at the Columbia Boulevard wastewater treatment plant. We've been using it to generate electricity for a number of years now. That has worked well. We continue to have additional increments of biogas that are produced through the process. We're now partnering with Northwest Natural. The Bureau of Environmental Services has done the engineering to capture all that gas, clean it up, and be able to use it for transportation fuels. That's what we're talking about. So that's a fantastic project. We need a lot more of those, and we're going to need more than we currently are aware of. But we know how to do it. This points us in the right direction. So in addition to establishing these two kind of fundamental goals, the resolution spells out a number of ways in which we hope to get there, and the mayor touched on a handful of these. So I'll run through these so everyone has a sense of what's in there. It would maintain the city's commitment to using 100% renewable energy on our own operations. 100% renewable electricity. We currently do that. We'd like to do more of that with on-site resources or contracts with direct resources elsewhere. And so continue to improve how we supply that renewable electricity. The mayor referenced the commitment in the resolution to prioritizing community-based development of renewables. The resolution includes a goal of 50% utilization of MWESB certified businesses. The resolution also includes a commitment to partner with Work Systems, Inc., labor, some of the other providers of workforce training so that we can make sure to support workers as the economy transitions into a renewable energy-based economy. We've referenced the utilities several times. They're absolutely fundamental partners in this work. Their work is both on the supply side, but also in continuing to invest in energy efficiency, bringing on the other capabilities around grid management, storage, demand response, et cetera, that are going to be required. So the utilities are key. To get renewable energy into the transportation sector, we've got to be accelerating the transition to electric vehicles, again, using renewable fuels when we can get them. We also need to be expanding our use of transit, and so that both means improving transit and then converting transit to electricity. We've got it in the max in the streetcar. TriMet has its first set of electric buses on order now. They'll be here, and I forget the year, another year or two, so we'll start to see that, and they are working on outlining what a full transition plan is. This resolution definitely lends a shoulder to that, to the need for that. The resolution also points to the value in green infrastructure in helping kind of manage our overall energy demand as well as making us more resilient to the climate impacts that we're already seeing. And then the resolution calls on the state to do what we need it to do, where it has authorities that the city doesn't have. And so that includes adopting similar overall goals, but then also using its authority to strengthen the building code, put us on a path to net zero energy in our buildings. Same thing with appliance standards. There are opportunities to continue to make sure that all of those devices we use minimize energy use. And then finally, the resolution establishes a climate action subcommittee of the Planning and Sustainability Commission and spells out the intended participation in that subcommittee. So that's the sort of general outline of the resolution. I want to point specifically to changes that are in the substitute. And so this, I think you have in front of you the substitute. There are a few smaller cleanups and sort of clarifications. The major changes are to incorporate a new whereas that specifies special consideration for any biomass project to look at the full environmental impact of that project. It also includes a new whereas that is addressing the economic potential of the transition to renewable energy, but also the need really to invest in workforce training and make sure we're supporting workers through that transition and recognizing they have many of the solutions already. So viewing the workforce as a key part of the solution, that then has a companion, be it resolved, to do the partnering with workforce training providers, Work Systems Inc., et cetera, so that we can actually deliver that. And then there's a new whereas that emphasizes the importance of energy efficiency and the role in green infrastructure in helping provide that sort of lowering demand community-wide. And then a companion, be it resolved, to expand the city's commitment to to green infrastructure. So those are the sort of major thematic changes that are in the substitute.
And we're also looking at a schedule of amendments, and it looks like there are effectively 1, 2, 3.
Those are maybes.
Yeah, so what
There's
you all have...
there's 5 that have effectively been included in various components. Am I reading this chart correctly?
Correct, that's right. So the substitute incorporates the ones where it's labeled that they're already included. The others are different. They're suggestions that have surfaced through the process. You may want to consider them. I think you'll hear from folks today with suggestions that may be reflected in those, may be new. So we'll try to manage that as best we can. I think so one other thing, and then Mayor, you expressed an interest in addressing the withdrawal from the parent.
Yeah, I'm going to offer up an amendment after your
Okay, and I
presentation.
think I have the language you want for that, but you tell me when you're ready for it.
Right now.
I think it's that. All right. So let's go to that.
So I'll just say this, colleagues, I'm moving an amendment. You should all have this piece of paper. It looks like you do. I'll just quickly read it. Amending whereas found at the top of page 2, whereas the newly confirmed EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt and President Trump are making decisions that are setting climate policy at the national and international level back decades by pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, defunding environmental programs, attempting to reinvigorate the coal industry, greenlighting major pipeline projects such as the Keystone XL and Dakota Access, attacking the Clean Power Plan, and weakening EPA's commitment to environmental justice, and then adding a be it further resolved, the city opposes the rollback of climate policy at the federal level and affirms its ongoing commitment to the goal of the Paris Climate Agreement and the city's responsibility to meet its proportionate greenhouse gas reductions for the United States under the Paris Climate Agreement. And
I will second that.
so we have a
amendment, Mayor.
motion, a second.
And Mayor, I'll just offer a friendly amendment.
Please.
Because the way the substitute resolution, which has been sponsored by Wheeler, Udaley, Fish, and Saltzman, is actually structured as be it further resolved. So I'll just, my friendly amendment is that we change the preamble to the resolve to reflect the language of the resolution.
No objection, Commissioner? No objection. So friendly resolved, be it resolved is on the table. Please call the roll on the amendment.
Fish,
Aye?
Udaley,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye, the amendment's accepted. Did you have more, Mark?
So the one thing I would leave you with, and then I think we've got some invited testimony, and then I can come back as amendments come up if that's helpful. But the one thing I'd leave you with is a list of companies that have made similar commitments. In most cases, they're around renewable electricity. So for us, that would be the 2035 goal. These companies and dozens of others leading up to about 90 total have already made this commitment. And so as we're trying to calibrate, are we being too aggressive here? What's realistic? What's achievable? I think this is an interesting list where it suggests there's some companies you might not expect to be ahead of us on this one, and there they are.
So Michael and Mayor Wheeler, I'm going to suggest after the invited panel, Mayor, that we actually ask Michael to come up, sit at the edge of the table, and serve as an air traffic control for us, because this is a little different than our normal procedure in that we're not going to be adopting all the amendments at the front end. And I think it would be helpful to have you there to give any clarifying information as amendments are offered through testimony.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we have a panel of invited guests, and Commissioner Fish, I believe you had a request?
Well, let's do our panel first, and then I have a group I'm going to invite up.
Very good, and it looks like we have about 2 panels plus 1 person. Could you please invite up Chair Kafoury? Well, I'll just do it myself. Chair Kafoury, welcome from Multnomah County. James Valdez of Northwest Seed, please come on up, and Angus Duncan, the Global Warming Commission Chair. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Chair Kafoury, for the great work that you and your fellow commissioners did this morning adopting these same protocols.
Thank you. I'm Deborah Kafoury, the Chair of the Multnomah County Commission. I want to thank you, Mayor Wheeler, and the entire Commission for your partnership on our joint Climate Action Plan, and I want to thank you for continuing that partnership by adopting a very similar resolution to the one that we voted out this morning. And I especially want to thank the community. You're going to hear from a lot of passionate and interested and involved people this afternoon, and it has really been their advocacy that has helped put climate change front and center and pushing for better and more comprehensive solutions to this issue. Today's resolution is a pledge to our children's future. The people calling the plays at the federal government right now are pulling from an old playbook. They are planting uncertainty when, in fact, concrete facts exist. To deny science and the overwhelming evidence that climate change is real is irresponsible. To refuse to do anything about climate change when we have that evidence is a dereliction of duty. We can no longer deny, we can no longer delay. We must take a stand for the health of our community. We must act now for our children's future. So it is up to us, all of us in this room today. We can and we must lead. Transportation is the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Multnomah County and is the single largest source of air toxics in Multnomah County. By switching to electric and clean fuels, we will have much cleaner air. But we must also act to reduce the economic and racial disparities that guarantee that those who can least afford to escape the effects of climate change will suffer the most. And I think it's safe to say that if we don't address these issues today, they will slip away from us. We may face a generation of children whose life expectancies are shorter, whose lifetime incomes are lower, and whose prospects for a better life are worse than ours. There may well come a point where the very climate we depend on for our way of life becomes imperiled. We are setting out this resolution today because we believe that a better future is possible. A future with a stable climate, a future powered by clean, renewable energy, a future where the benefits of clean energy lead to equitable economic gains for communities of color. We are pushing for bold action because our future depends on cities and counties setting the example. 100% renewables is not just a goal, it is an imperative. We must get there, and we can only get there together. 100% renewables means a future with clean air, a future with a stable climate, and a future with more economic opportunity. We can do this. This is our pledge to our children's future. Thank you. And I also want to add that I definitely support the amendment to address the Paris Agreement. The county voted on similar language this morning as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kafoury. We appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and members of the City Council. My name is James Valdez, and I am with a regional nonprofit called Northwest Sustainable Energy for Economic Development, also known briefly as Northwest Seed. Northwest Seed is, again, a regional nonprofit dedicated to the creation of communities powered by locally controlled renewable energy. And so we're very excited for this resolution that's gone forward today through the county and hopefully through the city as well. And really want to thank the staff and the leadership who has worked on putting this together, as well as the community members who have been engaged in this process. And really, this 100% renewable resolution is a critical and important step forward towards a decentralized, distributed, resilient, and more democratically controlled energy future. And going off script a little bit, in listening to what I heard just 2 hours ago from national leadership about the direction that, that they would like to take our country really backwards, it was just frankly appalling and completely counter to all the facts and progress that we've seen in the last decade of the deployment of renewables. And it completely ignores the reality of the growth of new energy systems and new energy opportunities that are current here now. And I mean, just one thing that was not mentioned, and I would not have expected to be, that there's 3 times more jobs in the solar industry than there are in the coal industry right now in America. That's something we should be proud of. 4,500 of those jobs, according to Solar Foundation report, are here in the state of Oregon, and we have the opportunity to significantly expand those. And so we shouldn't look, and this resolution really provides a platform to decouple the idea that more carbon emissions is somehow related to more economic growth and activity. We can move forward with a renewable energy future that provides new opportunities, new economic growth, and really more equity for everybody. And it's important that we do so. And the city of Portland, Multnomah County is really in good company. I know we like to think of ourselves as leaders here, and we are, but we're not the first to go forward even as cities. Michael mentioned this list of a number of Fortune 500 companies, but over 70 cities globally have committed to 100% renewable goals. Even here in Oregon, Lake County is looking to be a net exporter of renewable energy. However, that's really focused on the electric sector, and the proposal here and the Multnomah County and Portland resolution is the most ambitious in holistically looking at both electricity, transportation, home and industrial heating usage, and really tying this together into a vision for a community that is powered by renewable energy. And the resolution sets forward really, I think, a good framework to really oversimplify things. It's get fossil fuels off the grid, increase energy efficiency, and electrify everything possible. And that sounds easy, but it's going to be a lot of work. Energy is really fundamental to our lives. Access to affordable energy should be seen as a human right. Around our community, the threat of disconnection of utility services is a real and present danger for many low-income households. And especially as we look to the summer months where there's high heat, or the winter that we had, which was one of the coldest and longest we've had in a while, these are real threats. And so energy affordability is more critical than ever as we look to move forward this renewable energy resolution. And as we know, low-income households spend a disproportionate percentage of their income on energy costs. For the past century, really our energy infrastructure has been very centralized, fueled by what I'd call an underground economy. And I mean that both literally and figuratively, in that there's been little transparency, there's been centralized control, and there really hasn't been much oversight to the extraction of oil, coal, natural gas resources from our earth. And the companies that internalize profits and externalize environmental and human costs haven't really had to bear that burden. People have borne the burden and negative impacts of fossil fuels in human health impacts, climate, and the environment. In contrast, renewable energy really offers a different vision and a different future. It's largely out in the open and visible. It kind of almost by definition, wind and solar have to be out in the air. And we can see it. The transition to renewable energy, energy efficiency, demand management, energy storage, electric vehicles, all these solutions that are being put forward are going to be very capital and labor intensive. And I say that as a positive thing. This is an opportunity. What is key is really who pays for and who benefits from this new investment. And moving towards 100% renewable energy can and should be a powerful tool to address historical disparities and tangibly increase wealth for people of color and low-income communities. How this is implemented will really be the test as we go forward in these coming decades. And the priorities should be on community-based investment, increasing resilience, and reducing the cost burden for low-income households. We would support any amendments that directly address that. Utilities will continue to play a key role in providing connections between resources and customers and ensuring the reliability and safety of the grid. But there'll also need to be new technologies, new business models, and new financing mechanisms in order to implement this energy vision. Who has access to these opportunities? Who leads this process? All of those will be critical to the equity and success of our 100% renewable goals. So it will indeed, as Chairwoman Kafuri said, take all of us to join together and participate in this transition. And truly, we hope it is more than just a transition, but a transformation of our energy economy. This resolution sets a good framework for continued engagement. The hard work is really in front of us, and we're excited for this future. So thank you.
Thanks, James. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler, members of the City Council. Thank you for inviting me this morning. Since the Mayor and Chair Kafuri were subjected to my palette of PowerPoints this morning, I'm going to forego those this afternoon out of mercy and just offer a few general comments on the resolution. So, no surprise, the tweeter-in-chief has taken us out of the Paris Accords. And it is up to us in this room and in a lot of other rooms across the country to make sure that that just plain doesn't matter. If we are committed, if we are diligent, we can do that. In considering the strategies in these resolutions, it helps me at least to reflect on the city's admirable history in addressing these issues, starting with the 1979 municipal city energy policy that as a young and innocent staffer in the mayor's office back then, I was responsible for assembling and bringing to the council and getting adopted. The city negotiated into the Northwest Power Act of 1980 really critical considerations that still influence our choices today, including dealing with energy efficiency as a first priority resource and renewable energy as the second priority resource. Thermal energies came last in that document, and we collectively committed to doing least cost planning for electric energy. It was a first in the country, and now utilities and regulators all over the country have adopted that model. The city has been influential in shaping state and local policy on land use, on urban growth limits, on urban design. We have built toward a first-class transit, bike, and pedestrian system that people can choose now to use. We have adopted, and I was happy to play a small part in this, an aggressive city-county climate action plan, one that is not just adopted but also is implemented and tracked. And now we have these resolutions. And I just parenthetically would have to acknowledge Michael's enduring and positive imprint on many of these measures that the council has been able to deal with in the last few years. His decision to move on will be a loss to all of us. The city and the county have decisively supported utility progress toward growing the renewable energy content in our electricity supply. As I acknowledged this morning across the river, the influence, the fingerprints of the county and the city, can be read in our collective progress. And collective means the city, the county, utility customers, legislators, advocates, and the utilities themselves, away from yesterday's fuels of coal and gas and toward tomorrow's fuels of solar efficiency and wind and other renewables. So good for us, good for the city, good for the county, good for Portland General Electric and Pacific Power. They get credit for turning away from yesterday's fuels and facing forward. Importantly, these city and county resolutions recognize that while poorly crafted carbon reduction policies can be regressive and harmful to low-income households, climate disruption is more regressive still and relentlessly so. So we have to split that difference in creative ways. In this consideration. I commend to you Vice Chair Vega Peterson's language amending the county resolution this morning and addressing some of these issues. And I further commend to you, I think, some amending language you will probably hear proposed later on this afternoon for the city to set up a youth climate council. Since they're the ones that have the biggest stake in this future, they ought to also have a voice. So now, city, county, and state policy leadership across the country is going to have to stand in for the present failure of national leadership and character on climate policy, but Multnomah County and the city of Portland will have plenty of company. By my calculations, something significantly in excess of 50% of the states across the country and well over 50% of citizens, and many cities and counties, urban and rural, in states that are not part of that number are standing up and taking responsibility for moving our climate policies and accomplishments forward, and frankly, rendering the national government irrelevant on this issue. The city and the county are also going to have help from technology and market forces that are driving clean energy sources into production and driving their costs down. As I said this morning, it's everywhere from 60 to 90% cost reductions just since 2008 for wind, for solar, for lithium-ion battery technology, for light bulbs, and for many more of the technologies that you and we will collectively rely on. And I will close today, as I did this morning, by reading you a short comment from yesterday's New York Times, a statement that, frankly, I never thought I would live long enough to either read or recite. This is from a Times article talking about how wind is reshaping the energy grid, and it references Secretary of Energy Perry as raising the possibility of federal intervention in energy markets to protect coal and nuclear plants against low-priced wind. Enough said, carry on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. We have one more panel plus one. The next panel, Maya Rybeck, Dean Funk, and Alan Ippolito. Come on up.
Am I going first?
Yeah. Sure, go ahead. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners, for having us here today. My name is Mia Reback, and I'm a staff organizer with 350 PDX. We're the local chapter of the international organization 350.org, working in almost every continent to build a grassroots climate movement. We believe that solutions to climate change have always and will always come from the ground up. And so in December of 2015, at the same time when world leaders were gathering to sign the Paris Climate Accord, almost 1,000 Portlanders marched in the wettest, coldest day that December to really commit to implementing Paris through local action. And so I'm really excited and inspired that we're here today doing just that. The Paris Climate Agreement set a goal to limit global warming between 1.5 and 2 degrees Celsius. And we know that that agreement is only as good as its implementation. And with all things climate, the devil is in the details. And so I'm really excited that we're here today with lots of stakeholders in the room to get those details right. The City of Portland, we're building today on a legacy of great climate action, from our internationally recognized Climate Action Plan to the city policy opposing new fossil fuel infrastructure in our city. We've divested from the fossil fuel industry, and today we get to say yes. Yes to a clean and renewable energy economy. But in making that transition, we have to ensure that we're not creating another social or an environmental injustice along the way. And so I'm going to be speaking out in support of a handful of amendments to the policy as it's written. One issue that you're going to hear a lot about today has to do with forests and biomass, and we'd like to see the City of Portland matching its resolution to the county opposing biomass feedstocks sourced from public lands, both our state and federal lands. We also would like to support, along with Northwest Seed, any amendments that will protect low-income utility customers, as well as ensuring that our path towards community-based renewable energy is done right and with full support from environmental justice organizations, and you'll be hearing more about that in today's hearing. The Climate Action Plan sets a goal to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 3% every year towards 2050. But as time goes on and the climate crisis gets worse, so must our work to address climate change. With the recent studies now showing that we actually need to be reducing our greenhouse gas emissions closer to 6 or 10% each year to not cross some of these critical climate tipping points. So it's really inspiring that we are building on this climate action plan, doing more, going further, and setting a strong, really bold and ambitious renewable energy goal. The real impacts of climate change are reflected in this resolution. And as I mentioned in my testimony to the county today, it shocks me every time I read these resolutions to hear that Oregon is predicted to have a 10-degree Fahrenheit temperature rise in my lifetime. I was born in 1992, the same year our first climate action plan was passed. And if no action is taken, if we continue on a business as usual path, if I live to the age of my grandmothers, Oregon will warm 10 degrees Fahrenheit, dramatically changing life as we know it. And so I'm really glad that we're in this room today, committing to not go down that path, saying that we will completely transition off of all fossil fuels by the year 2050 and onto clean and renewable energy. Thank you all so much for your support. It means a lot.
Thanks, Mia. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. My name is Dean Funk. I manage the Local Government Affairs Group at Portland General Electric. I've been at PG since before the first Portland Multnomah County Climate Action Plan was introduced in 1992. And either me or one of my colleagues has testified in support of that plan, if not at every update, at most of them, I'm proud to say. Today's action by the city and county is more important than ever. If the U.S. does indeed, and apparently it has, withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement, it is a step in the wrong direction. PG was among the first energy companies to advocate for climate legislation at the national level, and the importance of national and international response has only grown in the last decade. The threat of climate change demands an international response, and it is disheartening, to say the least, to see our country move backwards. We are committed to doing our part to combat climate change by powering this region with clean, reliable, and affordable energy, and will continue to work with our customers to meet Oregon's progressive clean energy standards. At the beginning of March, I was in a meeting with the mayor, with PG CEO Jim Pyro and our VP of Public Policy, Dave Robertson. There was a short conversation about achieving the State Global Warming Commission goal of 80% reduction of greenhouse gases below 1990 levels by 2050. And PG is on a path to meet those goals, but beyond 2040, things get a little hazy. And Mayor Wheeler observed, and I paraphrase, well, that's for our kids to figure out the rest of the way. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
An acknowledgement, I think, that we don't know the technologies the future may bring. Despite that uncertainty, we are committed to helping our region lead the way in an effort to combat climate change. In early April, I think it's important to note, when our CEO, Jim Pyro, first heard of the city and county 100% renewable goal, the first words out of his mouth were, if that's what they want to do, then we're going to help them do it. Both Mayor Wheeler's comment and Jim Pyro's comments illustrate something important. Regardless of what happens at the federal level, our region will continue to lead the way by finding innovative solutions that strengthen our economy and protect our environment. And we are committed to figuring out how to build a cleaner energy future and figure it out together with the city and the county and our customers and community stakeholders who care deeply about the future for our kids and our grandkids. And while we don't exactly know how technology is going to evolve in the coming decades, or exactly how we're going to meet these goals, we know that we are going to move forward in a way that ensures affordability, reliability, equitable opportunities to share in a new clean energy economy. I want to thank the mayor, Chair Kafori, Commissioners Vega Peterson and Udaly, and their staffs for allowing us the opportunity to contribute to the process that created the final version of this resolution. As we move ahead into uncharted waters, it is extremely important that we retain flexibility so that we can find the best path forward together. Let's be clear. No one, not even the most distinguished energy expert, knows exactly how to get to 100% renewable energy right now. And so as we go forward, we're going to have to be nimble and make sure our policies are flexible so that we can continue to adapt as technologies advance. It's also important that we work together. I want to thank particularly Commissioner Vega Peterson, John Washtinsky, and Nathan Howard, among others, for facilitating input from a wide variety of groups. Over the last few weeks, several of us from PG met with stakeholder groups who might naturally be suspicious of a large utility's commitment to clean energy. Over the course of those meetings, I think that we've built up some mutual respect, and I hope that we can continue to build those relationships as we move forward together. I think that the resolution you're considering today is much stronger because of the input that has been received. And I hope that we can continue to have an open, collaborative process as we work to implement these goals. Customers, stakeholders, and PG, we all want clean, safe, reliable, and affordable energy. And we're only going to be able to make progress if we work together with respect for our institutions, for our culture, for our uniquely Oregon sense of community collaboration. I believe we got to today on the shoulders of a lot of great work done in the last 25 years. I don't believe that Portland is the recipient of the C40 Best Climate Action Plan in the world in 2017 without a community, including PG and our customers, being fully committed to taking initiative to take action ahead of the curve. And I especially don't believe we would have had this resolution in a workable form today, nor a climate action plan that is the envy of the world, without the sure, steady, wise, and relentless work of Michael Armstrong from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. I want to offer my personal thank you to Michael for his work and his deep integrity toward making
He's
the
blushing back there.
There's such urbane
I know, I didn't want
compliments
to
he's
look back
getting.
there. He does not like this kind of thing, I know. It is an honor, really, and a pleasure to have worked with him over the last few decades, and I know he's going to a place that's just going to make this all better for worldwide. I hope that his colleagues at the city and the county, and my colleagues at PG, will continue to seek his wise counsel as we move down this pathway. Last week, I was attending an internal meeting with my colleagues at PG, who are part of a newly formed work group under the meeting moniker, Journey to 100%. There's 8 to 10 of us around the table, and I realize that the second oldest person to me is probably 20 years younger than I am. Not surprisingly, with arguably the issue of our time being energy and climate, the level of talent we're attracting at PG is nothing short of astonishing. It really is remarkable. I know you're seeing it too, within the city and the community. Within PG, there's a palpable excitement in the room about tackling this challenge. PG's Franco Albee coined the phrase, journey to 100, and I think it captured very well what Mayor Wheeler said on March 3rd. We're headed in the right direction, but it is going to be a journey. And as I look around, I know we're in good hands, from the leadership at the county and the city, to the activists and stakeholders, to our staff at PG. We have very smart, very engaged group of people who are going to lead the way forward together, just as Michael Armstrong and others have done for the last 25 years. We're in this journey with you. It's a journey in part into the unknown. We can do this together, but only together as a community, as the work toward this resolution itself has demonstrated. So let's get going. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Dean, I'd just like to reflect on what you've just said for a moment. The PG and the utilities generally have been tremendously supportive of our climate action plan goals. And I really want to just appreciate back the good and hard work that you and your team have put into this. and helped us understand there's a balance here that's a very difficult one for the utilities in terms of both ensuring that we get to that 100% renewable energy target while at the same time trying not to price lower income people out of the market as utility ratepayers. And you've asked us for that attention to flexibility and balance. And I just want to underscore that we understand that and we appreciate it. And we're so thankful that we have utility leaders in this part of the country that support this kind of effort. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you for your strong statement and your commitment to these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners. I regret that I don't have any urbane considered compliments for Michael Armstrong in my testimony, but my name is Alan Ippolito. I work for a tax-exempt nonprofit named Verde. We're located in Northeast Portland's Cully neighborhood. Lately, I like to tell folks that I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the United States. And my father is from a town called Tamazunchale in the state of San Luis Potosí in Mexico, and my mother is from New Orleans. In the words of your friend and mine, Ray España, it's a blessing to be here with you today. I'd like to talk a little bit about the process that we used to get today. Here we are, and then to talk about our priorities for this resolution. We've had a strong opportunity in these last couple of weeks to work both with city and county staff to explore this, what we think is very exciting new territory of community-based development of renewable energy infrastructure. And I really appreciate the strength of that dialogue and the kind of unpacking that we're doing together on something that is being prioritized in a lot of environmental justice communities, but I think we have an opportunity to really move things forward. We come to this resolution with three priorities. One, as other folks have mentioned, is to protect low-income ratepayers. And so we did a good amount of work over the last week together with CAPO, the Community Action Partnership of Oregon, with the Coalition of Communities of Color, and with Northwest Seed to draft language, both a whereas and a be it resolved, that were included in the county's resolution. And we'd very much like to see that language incorporated in the city's resolution. We need to send a marker about protecting our ratepayers and calling them out specifically, our low-income ratepayers. But we also recognize that this resolution sets the stage, a restorative stage. We're recognizing that low-income people and people of color not only are on the front lines of climate change, but they have not participated in the growth of our renewable energy economy or in the development of policies that have led to that growth. And so we're also prioritizing and are grateful for the language about economic inclusion for our minority-owned businesses, our women-owned businesses, and our workforce. We understand that for many reasons, a lot of this goal will be met via big projects, big institutions, big partners. If Portland State University gets together with Johnson Controls and PGE and comes to you and says, we want to solarize PSU, there's a lot of good reasons to do that, right? But that's a hard arena for our community-facing organizations to participate. So obviously we need to create very, very strong inclusive mechanisms so that our businesses and our workers can grow with that economy that we as a community, as a government, are incenting its growth, right? We're coming to the marketplace saying we want something. But some of us can't compete in that sector effectively. And so what we're trying to do is to open up a new playing field where community-based organizations, where community-facing organizations can compete for these resources so that they can adapt renewable energy infrastructure to their own priorities. And I want to be clear, we pursue generative capacity, the ability to drive renewable energy infrastructure into low-income people and people of color neighborhoods in response to that specific community's priorities, which may be health, may be education, may be housing, may be economic opportunity. I think we all can imagine a future where renewable energy infrastructure is actually a key piece of how we fund new affordable housing. So we do not support the additional language in the substitute draft around transportation, food waste management, industrial processing, heating, and electricity investments, because we believe it deflects us from our goal to have this generative capacity in our neighborhoods. And we also think it is not aligned with the rest of the content of the resolution, which clearly spells out what is and is not renewable energy, but then chooses here on community-based development of renewable energy infrastructure to add new content. And also, there's a clear progression in our mind where in the Be It Resolved, we're talking about 100% of community-wide energy needs by 2050 with renewable energy, 100% of communities' electric energy needs through renewable energy by 2035, 100% from city operations from renewable energy, prioritizing renewable resources. But then when we get to the community, all of a sudden we've expanded the definition about what's possible or what field we're playing in. So we seek generative capacity. So the last few things I will say is, let's also be clear that our existing toolkit, we know it's inadequate, and we need to grow it, and we need to change it. And that's why projects like the solar installation at NEA, the solar installation at Hacienda CDC's futsal court, the June Key Delta are exceptions to our renewable energy practice. And they take years of painstaking effort by community-based organizations to cobble together those resources that are accessible to community. We want to flip that. We want to see broad investments by enough community as a function of this transition. This will be very hard work, harder than the work we've done to get to this content that's in front of you. And I would also say that for government and utility and other stakeholders, if this isn't the energy system you thought you would be regulating or operating or financing or building, let's talk about that. Let's figure it out. But let's not accept arguments of infeasibility. Justice rejects limits. This kind of thinking is the same kind of stuff that in the past told us you can't remove a freeway and build a riverfront park. A city can't have a climate action plan. Who does that? That a low-income community can't convert a 25-acre landfill into a park? Your daughter will never be able to marry her girlfriend. We as a community, we can't unite against hate. And it's the same kind of thinking that says that people of color can't develop and lead a renewable energy agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. We have Commissioner, we have one final invited guest, Kevin Lynch. Come on up, sir. Thank you for your patience.
Of course. I get the whole table to myself as a result.
There you go.
It's a great deal.
Don't
good
forget to
afternoon,
thank
Mayor.
Michael.
I'm sorry.
Don't forget to thank Michael.
Yes, and if you have any embarrassing anecdotes, this is a good time to share them with us as well.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners.
Afternoon.
My name is Kevin Lynch, and I'm the head of external affairs for a company called Avangrid Renewables, which until recently was Iberdrola Renewables. I'll get to that in a minute, but first I want to say as a citizen that I'm heartened by the fact that 3 of the 4 jurisdictions in which I live and vote have embraced the challenge to combat climate change: the city of Portland, Multnomah County, state of Oregon, and I guess as far as the 4th one goes, the United States, maybe we can all take solace in the notion that it's darkest before the dawn and that things will change soon. So let's hope. On behalf of Avangrid Renewables, thank you for giving me a couple of minutes to speak to you. A little bit about our company. Across the U.S., we're the 2nd or 3rd, depending on how you keep score, largest generator and provider of renewable energy, of electricity, renewable electricity. We operate power plants, mostly wind and a few solar, across 19 or 20 states now, with new projects under construction and 4 more. Here in the state of Oregon, we have a lot of wind power. The number is about 1,000 megawatts. It's kind of hard to describe what that really means, but it's an awful lot. And we are on the cusp of building more and also expanding into building large-scale solar projects here in the state of Oregon. We provide that power to all kinds of entities, utilities, municipal government utility agencies, directly to commercial and industrial customers here in the state of Oregon that want to have a green portfolio and the like. And then locally here in Portland, we have about 350 employees. And thanks to Prosper Oregon, formerly known as the Portland Development Commission, we are going to be here for a long time to come. It's a very exciting place to be. The roots of our business are here. We like to stay here and provide good jobs and run a national renewable energy business from our offices in Northwest Portland. I simply want to say that there are great leaps and bounds that have been made in renewable energy on the electric side in the last couple of years, and there's a lot more that can be done. Oregon is leading the way. You all are doing a great thing in setting this standard and this commitment. But what's remarkable is the technological change that is occurring that is making just the regular old electricity a lot cheaper than it had been before. And the trend appears to be likely to continue downward, and that it is becoming easier to bring more renewable energy overall into the grid, to integrate it, to manage the supply of renewable electricity from wind and solar in particular. That doesn't always show up all the time. We can draw on a number of resources, a number of technological improvements, tremendous leaps in information technology to bring more and more renewable energy into the overall power mix. So yes, perhaps nobody is quite sure how to get to 100% renewables by 2035, but if the recent past is any kind of prologue, you can do an awful lot between now and then toward that goal, to get to that goal. And you can probably do it a lot faster than you think. And finally, just as a small advertorial, and we're here to help you do that.
Thank you. We appreciate it. So before we get to Commissioner Fish, colleagues, and to those of you waiting patiently to testify, we're now going to go to the open testimony part of this. Commissioner Fish is going to make a request in a moment. I want to ask your forbearance. As many of you in this room know, we had a memorial service that the council and many other city employees attended this afternoon at 2 p.m. for Rick Best, who is one of our valued employees and was unfortunately one of the two men who was killed Friday on the MAX train. So we have started an hour late. And in fact, because of some of the logistics, we started more than an hour late. At some point, we will lose our quorum, and we will also be losing city staff. So I don't like to limit public testimony beneath 3 minutes, but I'm afraid this is one of those times where I'm just going to have to do it, and I'm asking for your understanding if we limit public testimony to 2 minutes. And I know most of you have drafted 3-minute presentations. If you can try and consolidate it, we'd really appreciate your understanding. Thank you. Commissioner Fish.
Thank you, Mayor. It is our tradition to let students come up first, particularly if they're missing school or sports practice. And so I am going to be introducing an amendment, but I'd like the students to present it. So I will invite Ella Schreiner, Zella Lobo, Peter Salinger, Sophia Smith, and Kira Mesh to come forward. If you would all come and stand with your colleague. And we've asked one student to be a spokesperson. These are outstanding environmental leaders from Grant High School, and they are sponsors of an amendment that we will take up. And we welcome you to City Council.
Hi, thank you so much. Well, I guess I might as well start off by thanking Michael for helping me get into climate justice activism.
Well done.
So we would like to propose an amendment for a youth...
I'm sorry to interrupt, and I should have made this clear. If everybody could state your name for the record, we don't need your address or anything, but just name for the record is helpful. Thanks.
My name is Ella Schreiner. Okay.
Thank you.
So we would like to propose an amendment for a youth climate action council through the city to help get youth involved, and I was planning to testify about this, so I'll just read my statement. Okay. As youth from Portland who are passionate about finding solutions, we have been very involved in testifying and advocating for policies like the ban on no new fossil fuel infrastructure. At both the initial hearings and the more recent implementation hearings, you, the commissioners, mentioned that you listened to us and made your decisions accordingly. It is clear that you recognize the importance of hearing and responding to youth voices. We are asking in this resolution on renewable energy that you provide us with a formal setting for which to influence policy. We recognize that the new resolution describes the formation of a climate action subcommittee, including Oregon tribes, communities of color, low-income residents, and youth. While we appreciate that many voices will be represented, we ask that you add the formation of a separate youth climate council. All of the affected communities in the resolution have youth who care about the future, youth who want to work towards solutions, youth whose vision is not clouded by corporate voices, and youth who are too often ignored. It is clear that youth have a unique perspective on this issue, which is why it is so important for our voices to be at the forefront of climate justice actions. In the words of Robert F. Kennedy, this world demands the qualities of youth, not a lifetime, but a state of mind, a temper of the will, a quality of the imagination, a predominance of courage over timidity, of the appetite for adventure over the love of ease. Through this council, we hope to have representation from schools throughout the city, bringing together youth who share a common concern for the future. Because we believe that we have an essential role to play in the transition to a sustainable future and in the restoration of a stable climate, we ask that you add the following clause to the resolution. Whereas youth and future generations will be significantly more impacted by climate disruption than those currently in positions of power, we must recognize that youth will inherit the effects of the bad decisions of the past, had the most to lose from lack of action in the present, and will spend their lives leading the transition to a truly green and sustainable economy. Be it further resolved, the city will establish a youth climate council to provide regular support and advice to the city in meeting our climate goals through strong science-based action. Thank you.
Well, very well done.
Thank you.
And Mayor and colleagues, this is what high school environmental leadership looks like. And so I will move the amendment, which contains a whereas and a companion resolve. Is there a second?
And as the most youthful person on city council, I'd be happy to second that.
So we have Commissioner Fish makes the motion, Commissioner Udaly seconds it in a most painful way of reminding us all. And colleagues, we can either, why don't we?
Let's take a vote. Just put it on the table.
Let's go ahead and do that. Can you please call the roll, Carla?
Fish.
I want to just say to Ella, Zella, Peter, Sophia, and Kira, thank you for taking time to come join us today. Thank you for your thoughtful leadership, for drafting this language, and congratulations for leading the way to include your new language into our resolution. And I'm proud to support your work. Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Well, since Dean already called me out on realizing that a lot of the leadership and innovation and responsibility for achieving the goals set forth in this substitute resolution will fall with young people. In fact, it will fall on people, many of whom aren't yet born. I think it's only the responsible thing to do to accept this amendment to the substitute resolution. I vote aye. The amendment to the substitute resolution is accepted. Thank you for coming in. So here's how this rodeo works. Carla runs it. She's going to call 3 people up. 2 minutes, state your name. If you are a lobbyist, you must tell us that you are a lobbyist. If you're representing an organization, that's helpful too. She'll call 3 names, and then she'll also call an additional 3 names just to let people know you're up on deck. 2 minutes, the yellow light will go off 30 seconds before you're done. It'll beep. The red light goes off when you're done. If you go way over time, the electric prod in the seat starts to work. And I understood we have about
41.
41, very good.
The first 3 are Dr. Theodora Songas, Kendra Hubbard, and Gregory Moynihan, and they'll be followed by Sophia Smith, Zella Logo, and Peter Solinger.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. I'm Dr. Theodora Songas. I'm an environmental health scientist and epidemiologist with 40 years public health experience in state and federal agencies, as well as teaching appointments at the University of Colorado, Washington State University, and Portland State University. I'm a member of the Climate Change and Health Committee of the American Public Health Association. I want to commend you on a very thorough and comprehensive renewable energy resolution that will contribute greatly to achieving Portland's share of the responsibility for responding to climate change. We must do all that we can as a city and as a community to respond to this crisis. Thank you for this excellent resolution and your leadership. I have a major concern, however, and that is the necessity to understand that using biomass as a source of energy is not a way to address climate change. In fact, it is counterproductive. As data from the Environmental Protection Agency shows, even modern facilities burning wood and other biomass emit as much or more CO2, particulate matter, and smog precursors per unit energy as modern fossil-fueled plants, including coal plants. And implementation of biomass as an energy source will result in degradation of the carbon sequestration capacity of our forests, when increasing forest sequestration is essential to controlling and reducing atmospheric CO2 levels. The city must actively safeguard vital living forest ecosystems that can generate clean drinking water, stabilize regional climates, and store carbon. Furthermore, the language in the resolution excluding biomass that does not minimize impacts to human and ecological health can be interpreted in many ways to fit one's own agenda. How does one minimize the impacts to human and ecological health by replacing one carbon-intensive fuel with another? The goal of addressing climate change becomes difficult to achieve. Therefore, I hope you will reconsider and exclude all biomass from the definition of renewable energy resources. And finally, please support Verdi's recommended changes to the resolution.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Hello, my name is Kendra Hubbard. Thank you for this opportunity. I've worked in the solar energy industry here in Portland for the last 7 years and serve on several boards, including an industry board, a nonprofit board, and the Energy Trust of Oregon board as well. And I'm sharing my opinion about solar and how we can participate in this effort. Providing clean and renewable energy to our state and country is a mission of mine, not only because of my determination to make a better environment for my 10-year-old son, William, but to help curb the effects of climate change globally. You see, my family is from Kentucky. My great-grandfather and his children worked in coal mines there. They all died prematurely from black lung disease, with the exception of my grandfather, who moved to the Pacific Northwest after serving in World War II. He wanted a cleaner and safer life for his family, and he made the choice to leave a thriving industry for the chance of a better future. We too have the opportunity for a better future, despite uncertain political times. I believe it will be up to us at local levels to drive energy standards and adoption. I sit on several boards, as I mentioned, in Portland, and I'm encouraged that the work of these organizations have provided a blueprint called the Oregon Solar Plan on how to help us achieve the city's 100% renewable resolution. I can send you a copy of that plan if you'd like as well. This plan is providing 10% of Oregon's energy from solar by the year 2027 for 4 gigawatts worth of power. You have industry partners who are here and ready to work to make this vision a reality. Portland can lead this transition. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Gregory Monahan, and I'm submitting this testimony on behalf of the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club very much appreciates the Portland City Council's leadership and vision in creating this forward-thinking and groundbreaking 100% renewable energy resolution. Local action like this and the similar resolution from the Monroe County Board of Commissioners are especially critical when our country's leadership in Washington is determined to reverse any forward progress on mitigating the worst impacts of climate change. In considering any amendments to this resolution, the Sierra Club asks that you stay grounded in the central tenet behind this resolution. The residents of Portland deserve a 100% renewable energy future that will be free from fossil fuels as well as other greenhouse gas emitting energy sources such as industrial-scale biomass. We understand that you may have been or still may be under considerable pressure from utilities and industry to weaken the resolution. Our country's laws require publicly traded corporations to act in the interest of their shareholders to maximize their profits. However, elected leaders such as yourself have a different mandate to ensure a future in which all the residents of the city can thrive. This mandate can only be achieved if you stand strong in support of amendments that strengthen the resolution and against the efforts to weaken the resolution. The Sierra Club supports the city's intent to have an open, inclusive process going forward that makes sure that traditionally underrepresented communities have a seat at the table. Thank you for your commitment to making this necessary transition a just one by seeking to reverse the trend of marginalization for communities experiencing the greatest impacts from climate change. Future generations will applaud your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your testimony.
The next three are Sophia Smith, Zella Logo, I believe is the last name, and Peter Solinger.
I have to step out.
Hello, my name is Sophia Smith.
And I'm Zella Lobo.
And first off, we just wanted to thank you for supporting our Youth Climate Council amendment. We are members of the High School Environmental Leadership Project, a group of youth from around Portland working in our community to find solutions for the climate crisis. We are excited that our city is taking big steps towards running on 100% renewable energy by 2050, and this resolution is a start. As youth, we want to do everything we can to support this resolution and be involved in its implementation. This resolution finally holds our city accountable for the actions that are affecting all of its residents and the rest of the world. It acknowledges the climate science, the communities suffering from the climate crisis, and where our city has already taken action to fight it. But what it is lacking is a strong stance on the definition of renewable energy. One specific concern we have with the current resolution is the inclusion of biomass in the list of renewable energy sources. We believe that it is important to define what renewable and non-renewable energies are, but biomass is not a renewable energy, nor is it free from carbon pollution. Carbon is released when trees are cut down, when they are transported, and when they are burned.
We have waited far too long to take action on the climate crisis. At this point, it is essential that we move towards sources of energy that are not emitting greenhouse gases, and biomass does not fit that standard. According to the Sierra Club, the average biomass power plant emits 40 to 60% more CO2 than an average coal plant, coal being considered the dirtiest of energy sources and the biggest contributor to climate change. Biomass facilities further climate change, releasing carbon that would otherwise be sequestered by the forest. This shows that biomass is in fact not renewable like wind and solar, and is not the right direction to be moving in for a safe climate future. The negative reality of biomass is apparent in PGE's fact sheet for a possible Boardman biomass plant. The report is misleading, stating that the plant will require 8,000 tons of torrefied biomass daily. On its own, that is a huge amount. What makes this misleading is that in order to produce 8,000 tons of torrefied biomass, they will require 12,800 tons of dry material each day it operates, because the torrefaction process, which heats biomass, results in significant loss of mass. Where will all of these materials and trees come from? They call it thinning, but how is nearly 3,000 tons of tree material every day just thinning? Advocates for the biomass industry argue that the carbon produced during the burning process will eventually be recaptured and absorbed by the forests that are regrown. But that simplified answer is not an accurate representation of what will happen. Logging changes a forest into a farm. You cannot replace a forest, you can only plant new trees, and forests are much more complex than just trees. Forests are ecosystems with plants, lichens, moss, and decomposing logs which all house and provide for species from insects to mammals. We ask that biomass be removed from the list of renewables in the current resolution. We must move away from energy forms that release large amounts of carbon towards those that utilize already occurring natural processes like wind and solar. Allowing biomass to be a part of our energy future will exacerbate the climate crisis, will reduce the health of our forests, and will reduce our air quality.
Please consider this proposed change to the resolution to make our city's stance on the climate crisis the strongest it can be. We, the youth, will keep standing up for our environment and for our generation. Please listen to us and make the right decision now, for we have run out of time to keep weakening our actions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Peter Salinger, and I go to Grant High School. I would like to start by thanking this council for bringing forward the resolution. The City of Portland has again shown that we are committed to a healthy and renewable future. However, I would like to quickly address a few areas for improvement in the resolution that I think would allow the city to take an even larger step forward in addressing the climate crisis. First, the resolution states, whereas renewable energy specifically excludes energy derived from fossil fuels, nuclear biomass that does not minimize impacts to human and ecological health, and the incineration of municipal and medical waste. I believe that the city's statement regarding biomass is confusing and unclear and creates a loophole that could undermine the goals of this resolution. The primary source of biomass is wood, our forests, and burning wood can create just as much pollution as fossil fuels. I would urge you to remove biomass from the definition of renewable energy altogether. If the City of Portland wants to have a strong commitment towards a healthy future for all, then we need to be clear and decisive, and biomass should not be included. Second, I'd just like to say I appreciate the city putting the youth amendment in place. The city states that they will create a subcommittee including Oregon tribes, communities of color, youth representatives, environmental advocates, city bureau representatives, and utility providers. All of those groups are included in the word youth. Maybe we could even get some aspiring city employees or utility providers. Youth as a whole is a wide and diverse group of people, all of whom deserve to have their own voice in the fight against climate change. Again, I would like to thank Portland for taking a leadership role in the fight against climate change and for showing other cities around the nation that we will stand up for what is right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ella, were you going to speak again? No. Okay, thank you. So next we'll go with Kyra Mesh, Nabil, and Jan Zuckerman. And they'll be followed by Bob Solinger, Michael O'Leary, and Mike Withy.
Welcome. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Kira Mesh. And my testimony would have been, I'm also with the High School Environmental Leadership Project, and my testimony would have been solely about the amendment that has just been added. And so I would like to take this time to thank you all for your unanimous support and your steps towards empowering the youth and this generation in the movement towards climate justice. As it has been made clear today, youth care about these issues. We are glad to have tangible steps taken to give youth voices a strong platform for consideration. We are the ones who will be experiencing the policies into the future. The language mentioned articulates the Youth Climate Council, but it also articulates the youth movement. So I would like to thank you for acknowledging that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Lorman, and I'm not Nabil. I'm speaking on his behalf, as well as a group of Madison High School students who have a club called ECO. I think it's tough for kids who have school hours to be present for their future. So having a youth council is hugely important it's huge for curriculum. It's like real life representation to the youth that this is important. It's not a fairy tale problem, that it's real. And it's an extra sign from those who are their elders that this is important and that their future is important. So thank you so much. So I will just read the statement from the Madison High School Eco Club. We are the future, we are the next generation to fill the last one's shoes, and those shoes are dirty and used. The land is dying, the water is no longer blue, and our food is inedible. As a club centered around the environment, we have made the commitment to do what we can to counteract the effects in our community. From nature restoration projects, recycling and composting missions, to simply vowing to turn off the water as we brush our teeth, we are gearing towards education projects to help inform our community on how to be more eco-friendly in day-to-day life with global climate change on the rise. When we heard about Portland trying to run on clean renewables by 2050, we were thrilled. Therefore, our statement is here at the ready in order to fight for this to be put into place. Of course, we want this renewable energy plan to go through for the environment. We have firm hope that by 2050, our city can run on all renewables. However, for many of us here at Madison Eco, it runs deeper. We want to live in a world where our children can breathe clean air, swim in clean water, and eat clean food. We want future generations to look at Portland and see the environmental wonders here and bring it all around the nation and eventually around the world. Instead of training our children to do mining and fracking jobs, we want our children to learn how to be environmental advocates, ones who build solar panels or manage windmill farms. We want Portland to be a clean city with little emissions and environmental impacts. We want to be proud Oregonians and live in a place where we can do what we love with a clean footprint. This plan can make it all happen. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
My name is Jan Zuckerman, and I'm a mother, a teacher, and like you, I'm deeply concerned about the planet. This morning, I gathered under the St. John's Bridge with 30 middle school students. At the Willamette River, we faced two signs, one touting the city's big pipe project to eliminate sewage overflow in the Willamette, and the other the Department of Health's warning to children, pregnant, and nursing mothers of the danger of eating toxic fish from our river. Asked to share their observations, an 11-year-old wondered how animals that eat fish can read signs. We discussed the meaning of irony and tried to wrap our heads around the words, Portland would not be here without the Willamette River. Walking upstream, I pointed out the oil and gas tanks susceptible to liquefaction as a problematic aroma of air toxins tickled our noses. We were looking at the industrial sanctuary, a sacrifice zone, a Superfund site, gas pipes, oil trains, chemicals spewing nearby. I asked the students what they were willing to sacrifice. They contemplated a solution to housing the fossil fuels somewhere else. How about near your school, I asked. They determined that there was no safe place. And one student shouted out, why can we just not have them? And so here we are, 100% renewable energy resolution before us. We sit in this sanctuary, posed to protect the lives of these children and the living things that they love and depend on. To do this, we must confront the irony in this document so there's no confusion about what the City of Portland stands for. It's a known scientific fact that biomass increases CO2, releases harmful toxins into the atmosphere, and has the potential to put our already stressed forests in danger. The Willamette River has taught us that we can't expect to move forward if we allow industry to drag their feet. A few days ago, a 16-year-old student confided in me that she doesn't wake up scared to death at night anymore or cry about the climate crisis. She's resigned herself to the idea of elected officials trading convenience and money for her health and well-being. This resolution has the power to show her our city commissioners are different. I ask you to stand with the children and make it clear that biomass is not to be confused in any way with renewable energy. This resolution has the potential to be revolutionary if we have the guts to get it right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mayor,
Commissioner Udaley, sorry.
I would like to propose an amendment. We've heard testimony now from several people about biomass concerns, and my office has received dozens of phone calls and emails about it today. I want everyone here to know that and I think all of us recognize there are serious issues with using wood and forest materials as so-called renewable energy sources. And while I'm confident that our resolution as written steers us clearly away from that, I want to propose an amendment that maintains the sense of flexibility that we're striving for advancement in technology, because we don't know what's coming down the pike, and we would like to not paint ourselves into a corner, but also alleviate some of these concerns and align with county language. So my amendment would remove, on the fourth whereas on page 3, remove the language that reads as follows: biomass that does not minimize impacts to human and ecological health, and replace it with biomass feedstock sourced from state and federal lands.
Where were you again? Which
Are you-
whereas?
I am
Clarify
on
if you're amending the substitute ordinance or the...
substitute.
We're on the
Yeah,
substitute.
so I'm on page 3, and I'm on the fourth whereas.
Commissioner, can I ask, so I think you have the list of most of the amendments we'd heard. Is the one you're referring to
think I do
drafting her own.
2B? Is it different than the one that's 2B?
Yes.
2B.
Let's see. I don't seem to have 2B in front of me.
It's on the cheat sheet. It's
Oh,
in the
there
cheat
we
sheet.
go. Well, I've got 2 different ones here.
The one that's highlighted at the bottom is the new one.
Yeah, that's essentially the same amendment.
Okay.
So Michael, would you give us commentary on that amendment?
So not all biomass is created equal, I think, as you've heard, and it is something I think you will hear more testimony about, and so you might keep that in mind if you decide to move forward at this time. I think the public lands includes a lot of land, but then obviously there's a lot of privately held land, and so trying to arrive at I think the point here is to be extremely cautious about any biomass project, which I think is part of why the substitute amendment includes the additional whereas that's immediately under the one that you're referring to. So there's a new one that says, any forest biomass energy project requires special consideration to ensure that ecosystem health is not harmed, that the project does not result in increased life cycle carbon emissions, and that air quality and fish habitat is not degraded. So I had understood that additional whereas, which is new to the substitute, was trying to accomplish what I think is in the spirit of what you're suggesting. And so to me, that's, instead of relying on the distinction between ownership of land, it's getting to what are the issues we're trying to protect against?
Mm-hmm.
So if I may, Commissioner, we've had lots of testimony back and forth on this, and I think the original resolution was interesting because it was sort of universally hated. The language is probably fair, and the debate really centered around different kinds of biomass. And I'm no great expert on biomass, but apparently there's woody forest biomass, and there are apparently other kinds of biomass that are in fact not, if I can use the pejorative, dirty. And so we had mixed testimony. The Coalition of Communities of Color, for example, cautioned us against eliminating across-the-board language on biomass that would potentially eliminate some of those opportunities. So what you see in the substitute resolution, I will describe as a compromise language that respects what the Sierra Club and others are trying to say with regard to forest-based woody biomass, while also trying to respect the other perspective as proffered by the Coalition of Communities of Color around the possibility of other kinds of biomass, and so they've asked for flexibility. Is that a fair description of sort of the
consistent with my
balancing act
understanding.
that takes place here in the
So you're saying the language
substitute?
in the substitute we have before us, or with the amendments?
No, the language that we
In the
currently
substitute.
have before us in the substitute.
Okay.
So it may still not be universally beloved, but slightly less reprehensible than the others.
Can I-
And the-
Mayor, can I make a suggestion?
Sure, yeah.
We have about 30 more people who've signed up. Commissioner Udaly, why don't we take a second to your amendment and lay it on the table? Conclude the testimony, and then let's come back and have the conversation. Is that acceptable?
Sure.
I'll second the amendment. I'll second your amendment. It's now on the table, and we'll take the rest of the testimony. Because if there is this delicate balance here, I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah, we'll call that Udaly 1, and that's regarding biomass. And I don't have, personally, I'll just say, I don't have solid feelings one way or the other, and I'd be interested in hearing more testimony on this before we take the vote on it. Thank you.
And Mayor, we have about 30 or so more people, so I'm guessing it's about another hour of testimony.
That's
before we
probably
get to
right.
deliberations?
Yep.
The next three are Bob Solinger, Michael O'Leary,
Where is she?
and Mike Withy,
Oh, yeah.
and they'll be followed by Janice Thompson, Adriana Voss Andrea, I believe it is, and Courtney Ray.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Solinger, and I'm here representing the Audubon Society of Portland today. First of all, I want to express my appreciation to you for this resolution. It's a great step forward. It comes at a time when we really do need leadership on climate change, and it's great to see the city providing that, especially on a day like today. So I want to express my support for Commissioner Udaly's proposed amendment. We are concerned about the biomass issue. As a group that works on urban issues and forest issues, we still think, even as written with the extra whereas, this still is confusing and leaves a loophole open. And so we would recommend removing the language around does not minimize impacts to human ecological health, and either eliminating it altogether and simply excluding biomass from the definition of renewable energy, or adding in the language about public lands. I think either one of those would get at the concerns we have. I appreciate the comment about trying to make the resolution less reprehensible, but I hope we can go beyond that and get to inspirational.
Very good.
Thank you. So this is
The other thing I wanted to testify to today is just to thank you for including the language on green infrastructure. It was originally not in here, and too often I think when we think about climate change, we fail to talk about the natural resource side of the equation. We talk about reducing dependency, more fuel efficiency, those kinds of things. We don't talk about natural resources often enough, and so it's great to see that included. When we talk about green infrastructure, we're talking about energy savings. Things like trees and eco-roofs can reduce heating and cooling costs. We're also talking about equity, putting in green infrastructure in our most underserved neighborhoods which need it the most, protect underserved populations from the impacts of climate change. And finally, it's about resiliency. We are going to see impacts from climate change. We're already seeing it on the landscape. So it's critical that we build resilient landscapes to protect our people and our environment. So those are our two recommendations. We support your amendment, Commissioner Udaly, and again, thank you for the green infrastructure.
Bob, can I just be clear about something? In your testimony, you said you support the amendment, but you would also support the alternative language, the alternative amendment that just restricts it to feedstock sourced from public lands?
No, what I was saying is either
there's two versions that are before us of a potential amendment.
The language from the county is what we would support, the same language as the county, right, which basically would eliminate biomass from public lands, right, or simply eliminate biomass entirely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon.
Hello, my name is Michael O'Leary, and in response to your amendment, I would ask for an indulgence of a few more seconds to address that, because that's a key part of my remarks today. I represent the Association of Northwest Steelheaders. We're a 1,500-member family fishing group. We love to go all up and down the Columbia and the Willamette and all the tributaries. I'm also here representing the National Wildlife Federation, because that entity thinks that this is really national caliber work. We really appreciate the effort to turn back the tide on what's happening at the federal level. And make no mistake, what's happening on the federal level is happening on many different planes. We have Greg Walden, who's been advocating for increased timber harvest on the east side for some time. We've got the Boardman coal plant turning off from coal, having a big option about what to do next. And we've got a production tax credit for biomass now being proposed in the U.S. Senate. And the Senate also deemed biomass renewable on the national level. This is no joke. We are going to see a sea change and difference in biomass. It's going to be up to us to put up some boundaries here. I'm here because our salmon are in hot water already. In 2015, 97% of the sockeye salmon did not make it to Idaho that they were expected. They turned over dead because of temperature and viruses caused by temperature. In 2016, we saw a decrease in the fall Chinook run, 52% from the year before. We can't take a year-to-year change like that anymore. In 2017, just this spring, our spring Chinook run has come in at the bottom, or now it's arguably the fourth worst since we started counting at the Bonneville Dam. Our steelhead is going to be closed before the season opens because the amount of incidental bycatch from even catching and releasing a wild fish is going to meet our ESA limitations. We're not going to catch and keep one steelhead this summer. That's about to be announced. That's really happening. We're here. We're here at Climate Change. We support this resolution because you're taking a leadership role. We believe there's work to be done in implementation. We believe there's work to be done on hydro. Judge Simon has ruled March 27th that hydro is the #1 killer of juvenile salmon. There's an injunction. This stuff's going to change. We're not going to get to enjoy as much hydro as we've had, whether it's defended by the utilities or not. That won't be in the portfolio in the same way. Biomass may be increasing. We've got real junctures here, and we'd like to follow through with the conservation expertise that we can offer and being constructive and being local on the ground here.
Thank you.
So thank you for your time and really appreciate your work. With respect to the amendment, we do like the clear prohibition of use of forest biomass from public lands. That does not obviously interfere with tribal reservation lands, which are not counted as public. That's a tribal nation, separate. And then, of course, for the private lands, we also very much appreciate your expert language to defend fish habitat from being harmed. We think that's model, again, national language and worthy of replacing and reproducing in other communities. So thank you for that.
You got it. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Mike Withy. So I'm very fortunate to be here today. A lot of people couldn't be here today. I very much support this. I don't know of anybody that doesn't, actually. This is a bright spot in an otherwise very bad year. Not a lot of great things have been happening lately in Portland, and so it's nice to see something inspirational come out of this. We know that it's going to take a lot of hard work, but it's well worth it. And it's been a while, so thank you, Michael. And Nick Caleb, and all the people at 350 PDX. I think you've all done a wonderful job. I think that one of the last gentlemen mentioned that our affordable housing stock should have some of this considered into it, and our microcommunities do have this solar energy collection, water collection, and all that. So I'll cut it short and say thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I was remiss in not saying we support the low-income ratepayer modifications Mr. Ippolito mentioned before. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
The next three, please. Janice Thompson, Adriana Voss-Andre, Courtney Ray. They'll be followed by Edith Gillis, David Vanat, Jana Gastelum.
Good afternoon.
Janice Thompson, Advocacy Director at Oregon Citizens Utility Board, also a city lobbyist. CUB was created by Oregon voters in a 1984 ballot measure to ensure a residential utility customer advocate in regulatory proceedings before the Oregon PUC and in legislative matters. For example, at the state level, we were a key player in passage of Senate Bill 1547. Kind of the coal transition bill. Nevertheless, we recognize that more was going to be needed, which is why we support the 100 by 50 resolution. Definitely appreciate all the diligent work regarding the wording of this resolution, and particularly the consideration of the amendments related to youth and low income. Issues have long been a factor in our work related to utility regulation. Nevertheless, it is, I think, important to recognize that the work really begins tomorrow, or maybe even better wording is that the work continues tomorrow, since this resolution does build on many previous actions. CUB's work does focus on economic analysis. That economic emphasis, however, is informed by underlying values of equity and the need for public health and environmental protection. And so those values definitely inform our support for this resolution. But it's increasingly clear that we can get there, if you will, just based on comprehensive economic analysis. The status quo related to climate change has genuine and adverse economic impacts. So we'll definitely be monitoring efforts paid for by utility ratepayers, but cost-effective measures that also reduce greenhouse gas emissions are occurring now, and this trend can and needs to continue, and we'll focus on that quite a bit. So thanks for all your work on this resolution and in the steps that follow, and indeed your leadership is truly a national model. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
2 minutes.
That was perfect. About as good as it gets. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners Udaley, Fish. My name is Adriana Vosandre, and I'm co-founder and executive director of 350 PDX. I'm also a scientist and a mother. We are standing at a historic crossroads at a time when we're facing catastrophic climate disruption, when over half the world's forests have been destroyed, when over half the world's wetlands have been decimated, when over half the world's coral reefs are dead or dying, when species are disappearing at 1,000 times the normal rate, when millions around the world are already suffering from the effects of climate disruption, the US government has been derelict. We're at a historic crossroads. The richest 1% have more wealth than the rest of the world's population combined. We're also seeing a crisis of inequality within this country, with an unprecedented concentration of wealth for the few, while for the rest, there is a steep decline in social mobility, failing schools, overcrowded jails, increased job insecurity, and shrinking safety nets, with by far the heaviest burdens being carried by low-income and communities of color. This vast inequality and climate disruption are destroying our democracy, our humanity, and our planet. And they share the same root cause of corporate profits over people. And we cannot solve or mitigate one without the other. I want to thank you for this resolution. And I urge you to not only join other cities across the nation by committing the city of Portland to 100% renewable energy with no industry loopholes, such as biomass, but also to affirm the city's commitment to equity. 350 PDX strongly supports Verde and others who are asking for significant and enforceable contract diversity and workforce diversity standards on publicly funded renewables projects, early significant capacity building investments in community-based organizations, leading to increasing percentages of energy needs met by community-based renewable energy infrastructure. The early goals, 2%, 10%, are too small, and they need to grow and be accelerated. 350 PDX also supports the amendment that protects low-income ratepayers. And we're excited about the creation of the Youth Climate Council. We're at a historic crossroads, and especially at this time, cities and municipalities have an even more critical role to play as we forge and implement a new positive vision toward a just transition for our children, for our democracy, for our planet. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your testimony.
And
Good
thank you.
afternoon.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Courtney Ray. I'm an organizer with BARC. We are the local watchdog group looking after Mount Hood National Forest. I will just say that I am very impressed with the students in particular and their grasp of how complicated an issue that biomass is. I hope that you heard them. And I want to, I guess, highlight that the decisions that you make from those seats up there are not happening in a vacuum. And there will be impacts not only here in the city and in our communities, but there will be impacts across the landscape and across the nation. I want to highlight as well the asks that are coming from the communities working in the capacity of environmental justice in the city. I expect that if you put just and rapid transition in the tagline of your resolution, that you will eagerly accept the feedback and recommendations from Verde and other groups we've heard today. On the subject of biomass, I want to remind you all that public lands, in fact, are a target of the federal government, of the move to privatize these lands. And why would they like to privatize them? Do I have to say it's because they would like to extract and consume and base their profits off something that should be a legacy for future generations? And if we're thinking in terms of climate solutions, which I think we are today, the number one reason to manage public lands at this stage in our Anthropocene is for the sequestration of atmospheric carbon. This is the perfect technology for doing this. We don't need fancy like scrubbers. I don't know what they're referred to. We don't need extra material, extra infrastructure on top of fossil fuel producing power plants. We just need to reestablish the natural systems that have been regulating this atmosphere for 300 million years at least. I believe that here in Portland, we have a unique opportunity to protect forests like Mount Hood National Forest. It is the 6th largest carbon sequestering forest in the nation. If you want to count down the carbon that you're removing as part of the city's program, I think that you want to include the value of having a forest of this magnitude in our backyard. And I urge you to accept the language that the county approved this afternoon that explicitly protects public lands in this way. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
The next three are Edith Gillis, David Van Holt, I believe is the last name, and Jana Gastelum. And they will be followed by Steve.
Sorry, I apologize, Carla.
They'll be followed by Stephen Mador, Alex Anderson Biliu, and Regna Merritt.
Commissioner Udaly.
All right, so I'd like to move that we, haven't I already done this?
Your amendment's been introduced and seconded,
Okay.
and you just want to put it to a vote?
Okay, I want to put this to a vote then. Shall I read the language?
Yes.
So the alternative language that we've established is, whereas renewable energy specifically excludes energy derived from fossil fuels, nuclear, biomass feedstock sourced from public lands, state and federal lands is what, the thing you just handed me is slightly different than what I said. Okay.
Yeah.
From state and federal lands, and incineration of municipal and medical waste.
Very good. So just.
Second?
There's a motion from Commissioner Udaly, and just to be clear, 2B has a slight change to state and federal lands. And Commissioner Fish seconds. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Fish.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The amendment is accepted.
Mayor, can I, Mayor, we've heard a lot of testimony about amendments offered by an equity coalition led by Verde. I think this may be appropriate to put those amendments on the table.
Commissioner Fish.
So there are two. First is add the following whereas. Whereas the benefits of affordability programs can ease the energy burden on low-income households, fostering equality as a percent of household incomes and preventing disconnections, and thus mitigate the impacts of price spikes and the cost of implementing renewable programs, and add a new, be it further resolved, the city will partner with energy utilities and community-based organizations to adopt policies that reduce the cost burden for low-income customers and make incentives available to foster equality in energy burdens as a percent of household incomes.
Second that.
So Commissioner Fish moves, Commissioner Udaly seconds.
I would
Commissioner
just
Udaly?
want to raise the other issue that Alan Ippolito brought up about the language on the 4th, be it further resolved on page 4.
This was the amendment that was
Okay.
offered. Can we do this separately?
Let's call the roll.
Thanks to Alan, Verde, and everyone who testified in support of this amendment. Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The amendment's accepted. Commissioner Udaly?
Alan Ippolito from Verde also requested that we remove a line, well, a partial line from the 4th, be it further resolved on page 4. We would remove transportation, food waste management, industrial processing, heating and electricity investments, And it would read, be it further resolved, the city will prioritize community-based development of renewable energy infrastructure and will make investments in community-facing organizations to build capacity to lead such development to meet 2% of community-wide energy needs, including transportation, heating, and electricity via such infrastructure by 2035 and 10% by 2050.
So I'll second this for discussion. Could you come forward, Michael? Because I actually read this differently than Alan. So let's ask. You were here, Michael, when Alan Ippolito testified. I actually read this a little differently than his concern. Could you address his concern?
Yeah, so I understood that him to be pointing out that in this, be it resolved, we refer to community-based development of renewable energy infrastructure, and then we detail a number of sort of related things, whereas everything previously has simply referred to renewable energy. And so I think he was looking for clarity and trying to understand, are we saying something different here than we're saying elsewhere?
So is it fair to read the additional language as being the equivalent of including but not limited to, or including, or was it intended to be a term of limitation?
It reads as a limiting, so to me it reads as a limiting
Because
measure.
he was, I think, objecting to the fact that the language is inconsistent from other language.
Right.
So the option is either to remove the language which is inconsistent or to put a qualification in so that it's just meant to be illustrative. And again, the way I read it is that we could solve the problem by just putting including in so that it was illustrative. Does that do violence to the language, and does that meet, do you think, the concern that was raised?
I would never presume to speak for Alan.
Well, particularly after he gave you such a glowing tribute. But what?
I read it the same way you do. I think
Wait,
those are
let's do
intended to
this.
be
Let's
illustrative.
ask him.
It's like a Woody Allen movie.
There he is.
Oh, there he is. We're looking
You know
for
nothing of my work. So come up forward, Alan, for a second.
Alan, you prepared your speech, right? Or
Alan, would you see the table just for a second?
Alan, I have just proposed that we remove the language that you had requested, and we would like to revisit that issue with you.
Sure. No, I appreciate
So just
that.
by way
Thank
of
you.
background, we've adopted an amendment which accepts your language. The new whereas and the new resolved has been accepted. So the formal amendment that was presented by the Equity Coalition, now we're looking at the language of
that's
the
great.
of the
Thank you
resolved.
so much for that. That's
Yeah.
great.
Where you asked to have something struck. And the question that we're grappling with is, if the additional language in the resolve was meant to be illustrative and not to create an inconsistency with other resolves, if we were to insert an including, so it's meant to define the potential but not be a term of limitation, does that meet your concern?
Well, that already takes place below. At the bottom, it already says that community-wide energy needs, including transportation, heating, and electricity, will be met by this kind of infrastructure. So I have difficulty grasping the purpose of putting it up at the top as well.
I don't know, I wasn't the author, so.
You see, does that, I mean, it already says that we'll meet 2% of community-wide energy needs, including transportation, heating, and electricity via such infrastructure. So it's either duplicative or it means something else.
So just, I'll tell you, since I'm not the author and I'm trying to understand the concern, I actually read it as expanding, not contracting opportunities for community-based organizations. So it is different, but I read it as actually strengthening your hand, not weakening your hand. So who was the author of that? Was it the noted environmental lawyer Nick Caleb? Is it, who?
Nope. I know there was a discussion yesterday. Jamie, do you want to?
Jamie, can you come up and help us? Because I think we're all trying to get to the same intent, and we're
Yes,
now struggling over
absolutely.
language.
Jamie Duhamel, Policy Director for Commissioner Daly. The original community-based language was actually crafted with our office and Verde. The additional language that we're discussing right now was a suggestion from Pacific Power.
So you'd like to go back to the original language that you proposed?
Yes.
Okay, and, all right, so Commissioner Udaley.
All right, so I,
You want to strike the additional
I
language?
would like to strike that additional language that I just read.
Well, I'll second it for purposes of discussion. And Michael, since there's other definitions throughout the document, does it materially change what we're trying to do?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you.
I think it streamlines it.
Mayor, I call the question.
So are we voting on amendments before we hear all the testimony? Is that-
Yes, we are. We've heard, on the last ones, we heard substantial and consistent testimony, and I think we reached the point where we were persuaded. And so we don't necessarily have to do that, but in these particular questions, we've had commissioners as.
Well, and I just raised this because Commissioner Fish had introduced the two other Verde amendments, and I thought it was a good time to.
Okay, well, I have some amendments I guess I'd like to also offer, or.
Well, we first have to
ask
Let's call
questions.
let's call the question on this one, unless people have further questions before we call the question. Call the roll, please.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, the amendment's adopted.
Okay, I'd like to ask Michael Anderson, while you're up here, I'm curious why there's no reference to hydrogen power, cogeneration, or fusion in sources of renewable energy.
Well, so nuclear is specifically identified in what it doesn't include, what we don't include by renewable. So
Right,
that
I
one is
know we
called
don't
out.
include nuclear fission, but fusion.
You're ready for fusion?
Though fusion is, though unattainable at this point in time, is certainly generates no waste. My understanding produces more energy than it actually consumes. I know it's unattainable, but it seems like, we're shooting for the stars here anyway. So we should try to be as broad-based as we can.
We're
And
not
then what about hydrogen
excluding
power?
it, though, are we?
What about hydrogen as a fuel for transportation?
So I don't believe this excludes hydrogen, but the question with hydrogen is always, how do you get it? And these days, conventionally, you get it by taking natural gas and breaking out the hydrogen atoms. And so that can be done renewably, and if it did, I think it would meet the definition as currently described.
Okay.
But if you simply say hydrogen without then following that back to the feedstock, I think that opens up an opportunity that's not consistent with the intent of this.
Okay.
I think that was the thinking around hydrogen.
So we could put hydrogen in as long as it's not a natural gas feedstock. Hydrogen power derived from a renewable resource. Okay.
It uses more energy than it gives.
I think the other issue with hydrogen is that, like electricity, it's an energy carrier. And so it's all about what the original source of the energy is, whether it's the ancient
okay.
sunlight
I'll
or if it's
accept that
current
maybe we don't
sunlight.
want it from natural gas, but I also
Yeah.
accept we shouldn't be limiting ourselves to technologies that are on the future, albeit maybe the distant future, but 2050 is also the distant future. So I don't think we should be limiting the possibilities of how we may achieve 100% renewable energy in the city of Portland. So-
Yeah, and I guess my point is hydrogen, nowhere in here do we spell out all of the different kind of energy carriers, the different ways energy can be conveyed, and hydrogen is one of those. So it's not excluded here. It's not specifically singled out, which I think is your point, and I think that's fair.
If I could also just add some color commentary, because there were lengthy discussions about the unforeseen technologies of the future. And I'll just remind people that while this resolution is intended to be as close to perfect, and I'll use Bob's word, inspirational as possible, it will likely be amended in the years ahead as new technologies come online, as new ideas come forth that are renewable that we haven't yet been able to anticipate. And so I'm hopeful this isn't closing any doors with regard to future innovations, ideas, or technologies around renewable.
Well, and Michael, if it's not excluded, and if at some point there is a path forward to a renewable version that meets our standard, we could either acknowledge that at that time, or it would not be at odds with our thing. So I'm loath to put in something without understanding all the consequences, particularly since it's not excluded. So.
Also, thank you.
Well, I guess I'm still hung up on this because it does specifically exclude energy derived from fossil fuels. So any hydrogen derived from natural gas would not be included, but hydrogen derived from a renewable source, I think should be included.
And as I read it, it is.
No, I don't see it in the renewable energy. I guess I would suggest we put renewable energy includes energy derived from hydrogen, wind power, solar, low-impact hydroelectric, geothermal, and ocean wave technology sources.
But didn't we just establish that there is no renewable method currently?
You can. I think the issue is it's, you can take water molecules and break them into hydrogen and oxygen using solar power.
Okay.
That is a renewable fuel getting to the hydrogen, which is the energy carrier. That's not excluded here.
Right.
Because you're using solar power, and then you're working through your chemistry, and you're getting to an energy carrier that happens to be hydrogen. We also use electricity to, those electrons are doing the work in that case.
Electrons.
But we don't call out electricity either. And so I guess my point is this is not getting into all the different ways that energy is conveyed or carried or stored. It's trying to get to what are these sources of the energy, mostly which boils down to, is it, because it all comes from the sun, right? This is everything. And the question is it current sun or is it ancient sun? Because the ancient sun is all stored in fossil fuels. And hydrogen it's sort of none of the above. It's simply a mechanism. And we don't spell out the other mechanisms.
Mayor,
We're going to follow Bob Salinger's advice and be inspirational. I would argue hydrogen should be in there.
Mayor, Dan has proposed an amendment. Let's just see if there's a second. And if there's a second, let's put it to a vote.
Dan, could you restate the amendment, please?
To insert the word under renewable energy, includes energy derived from hydrogen. That's the amendment. And then it would go on to read as normal, wind power, solar power, biomass, not biomass, my glasses on there. Oh, geothermal and biogas and ocean wave technology sources. I think that is really sort of the inspirational type of inclusiveness that we should be looking at in terms of how we're going to achieve 100% energy renewable by 2050.
Commissioner Saltzman moves. Is there a second? I'll second for the purposes of discussion, and maybe we could take some testimony.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Sorry. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Edith Gillis, and I think that there are many things you can be doing that can be acted on right away, as well as those that you start today with your decision that can build for a future. What you can command happens today, can be implemented today. Telling the police to turn off their engines when they're parked, get out of their cars, walk the beats, and do not use military assault vehicles or chemical weapon disperser vehicles. What we can do that's over the longer term is to do more to build our green infrastructure so that we have more chlorophyll plants, including algae, at almost every surface. We can have internalized clean water wheel turbines in our drinking water and in our sewer treatment systems. We can also have that in the rain roof water as it flows down so that we're generating small amounts of electricity. We can also be using a Tesla-style reflective type energy that is not coming from any of these other sources we've talked about. We can mandate that on every roof owned by the city, whether it's a small latrine or a large facility or parking garage, that roof produces oxygen and takes out carbon dioxide, cleans the air, produces food, fiber, or fuel with plants, that it collects water, and that water is restrained, and that on the roofs, we do not have the methane, et cetera, from toilets going into the atmosphere, but in pipes going into the ground. On walls, we can require that there be more green structures or greenery growing along the walls. It would reduce our heat sinks. It would produce more oxygen, less carbon dioxide. our parking lots. We can have bioremediation of the pollution in the air and the water. We can have a filtration system, and we can have fire suppression for the collection of water. We can also be using the water tanks as heat masses for water collection. For shelters for the houseless, we can have zero carbon footprint with having bales, hay, straw, hemp, weed, not as in pop, and having sand and earth structures. We can include more lighting, so we use less electricity with our reflective and magnification. We can have greenways that are going to have more resilience against the multiple earthquakes and the explosions and fires from the methane gas pipelines that we have, so that we have not only infrastructure for cooling and for cleaning our air and reducing the energy that has to be used, but also for internal refugee camps for folks who are waiting those years in between housing. So I include all the ways in which you can, starting today, reduce our energy and produce energy.
Thank you. And Carla, could you check the timer? I wasn't awake there because it didn't ring.
I'm sorry, I had the beeper was turned off.
Oh, very good.
I've got
Okay,
it on
sorry.
now. Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm David Vantoff. I'm the acting Oregon Director for Climate Solutions, and very pleasure to be here in strong support of this this resolution. It's in our view a groundbreaking piece of work, and I mean it's been talked about a bit before. There's the other cities have some other cities have looked at trying to meet their electricity needs with 100% through resolutions, but to my knowledge, this is the first city of any size that is taking this ambitious step to say we need to look at all of our energy by 2050 to be 100% renewable. So thank you very much and commendations. Climate Solutions is a regional nonprofit working to accelerate clean energy solutions to the climate crisis. We have submitted written testimony, so I'm going to try and be real brief here to just highlight a few things. We're very supportive of the amendments that you guys have moved forward today with the Verdi amendments, the Paris Agreement federal piece, and then with the youth amendment. So thank you for those great improvements to the resolution. And then from a Climate Solutions perspective, I think we've kind of three general takeaways from this resolution. And one is don't make it any worse. And thankfully your resolution is addressing that, saying no new fossil fuel infrastructure development, whether it's new gas plants, new long-term infrastructure or contracts. No, don't make it worse. And that's the first step and a huge step. And then electrify everything is another core part of this resolution that we're strongly supportive of, particularly with respect to public transit. We're appreciative that you highlight the importance for TriMet to rapidly transition to electric buses. I would just note that King County has already announced that they're moving to purchase over 100 electric buses. They've done the analysis. It's the least cost option from a life cycle perspective. And we encourage, I hope that this will help to encourage TriMet to move in that direction rapidly as well. Okay. And then lastly, buildings and the importance of the building codes in making this achievable. Michael talked about that a bit. Thank you, Michael, for your leadership. And just real quickly, we had proposed, and we would again offer up, I think it's in some of the proposed amendments, that you call out net zero energy buildings. It's already in your climate action plan. Reaffirming it in this resolution, I think, would strengthen it with respect to the code language, and would note that at the state level, there's conversations right now around net zero energy building, and the city strongly supporting it would be an excellent signal. So thank you very much for your...
Very good. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the Council. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I'm Jana Gastel. I'm the Climate Program Director at the Oregon Environmental Council. We've been working on a statewide basis to try and move the state in a similar direction, but it's much slower progress. So I want to thank you for your leadership here today, for putting out strong visions, interim targets, but also that long-term solution. And as part of our broader work, we've been really working on equity-centered approaches to addressing climate change. And we appreciate so much that those same values are echoed in this resolution, and in particular in many of the amendments that you adopted today. So thank you for that as well. I want to spend a little bit of my time talking about the transportation side, since I think that's gotten a little less attention today. As Dave noted, electrification is a really important strategy. We can decarbonize our electric sector, but energy is the transportation sector is a huge consumer of energy. And so we've offered up some additional language about how to transform the transportation sector, particularly around freight efficiency, which is a growing source of emissions currently, and also making sure that we're moving to other sources of energy as well, including bike and pedestrian options. But if we're really going to hit community-wide energy targets, we have to address the transportation sector. As we begin implementation, we would love to stay in touch and be a part of that, and work with your staff. We want to make sure that we're continuing to support existing programs. There are inevitable bumps along the way when you start to implement things, and there's a lot of learning by doing, and we would love to be part of that process. And a rich stakeholder process will really make sure that there's long-term success in all of that. So thank you so much for your vision and your leadership in continuing to a beacon at a time when it's particularly needed. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, we would love to have your continued involvement. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next three are Stephen Madore, Alex Anderson Bulow, and Regna Merritt. And they will be followed by Nancy Crump-Packer, Dick Harmon, and Sheila Holden.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Mayor Wheeler and the council for bringing this resolution. So I've worked I'm Stephen Madore, and I've worked in the renewable energy sector for 10 and a half years prior to my current job. And I currently work for BARC in their outreach. So I want to thank you very much for, and I support adding the forest biomass to the list of energy sources that are excluded from renewable energy sources. Thank you. You know, I also feel strongly about Verde's language involving their amendments. I've also been considering some language that may be able to add new solar infrastructure to any new developments in the city of Portland. Certain areas like the city of Paris and Germany have adopted resolutions that would require any new construction to include renewable energy sourcing at the site. Also, I am extremely supportive of language that would help to reduce impacts of changing to renewable energy for low-income communities. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Mayor, council members, concerned citizens, and Michael. My name is Alex Anderson Beaulieu. I hold a degree in biology, and I studied under a local environmental scientist, Dr. Sergei Polozov. Portland participated in creating a monumental win for the global community in the fight against climate change by passing into law the prohibition for expansion of fossil fuel transport and storage within this city. I present to you today a graphical representation for the trajectory we faced at the time the resolution was proposed and concurrently the changes by the time the resolution was passed into law. If you will, please find on the horizontal axis mark the indication that represents our present year of 2017, and along the vertical axis line, the mark which indicates the present CO2 levels in the atmosphere as of April 2017, which was observed to be at 409.01 parts per million, as reported on May 5th, 2017 by the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii. The resulting intersection, if your lines match up accordingly, indicates that we are at the precise moment of divergence for the true trajectories. The difference between them is an estimated loss of 16 years in order to have clean energy implementation in place. This is due to a 10% increase in CO2 emissions within the 1 year, and the projection of that being continued outcome since fossil fuel remains an integral part of our lives. That can change. Based on the information provided before you, we are estimated to reach what the scientific community thinks to be a terminal cap of 500 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, as indicated by the red line on the graph, as soon as the year 2031. We already lost 16 years in 1 year. Provided that there are no additional increases globally for CO2 emissions after today. It is suffice to say that none of us here today are alone in our efforts for a just transition to clean energy. Based on the proposal being discussed, it is apparent that everyone is working hard, phenomenally hard, to find real solutions. I hope that today you make your decision based on evidence and in the best interests of our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, we appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I just want to say thank you. I'm thrilled right now with the amendments that have been proposed and accepted. And anyway, my name is Regna Merritt. I'm a former physician assistant and a current director of the Healthy Climate Program at Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility. Our organization consists of thousands of health professionals across the state who are concerned about public health crises for which there is no cure. We are the bearer of a legacy of doctors from around the world who stood up against the threat of nuclear war during the 20th century in the name of human health and survival. Now we stand with all health professionals and with you, the City Council, to prevent the worst impacts of climate change. Climate scientists speak often of the level of warming after which our planet cannot return to what we experience as normal. Thus, health professionals know that the only prescription for global climate chaos is prevention. So here we are, poised to pass what may be the country, perhaps the world's most progressive and equitable resolution to commit to 100% clean and renewable energy by 2050. Health professionals are known to be attentive to detail. We know that frack gas cannot be part of a solution to our renewable energy needs. We know that nuclear power and incineration of medical and municipal waste are too dangerous to public health to be considered renewable. So we're really pleased to see that manifest in this resolution. We're also grateful for the amendments earlier, substitutions for green infrastructure and of course, biomass. We need to protect our amazing carbon sequestering forests. We're happy about the amendments proposed by Verde, and we're happy and proud to make history with this City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to also make a direct response to Commissioner Salzman's question about hydrogen.
Colleagues, is that acceptable?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Please continue.
So basically, hydrogen works primarily as a storage mechanism as opposed to actually an energy production, and is in large part, theoretical at this point. So, I believe that focusing on the energy production would be the best use of this renewable energy proposal. So, and thank you very much for everything that you put into this. So
great. Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Next three, please.
Are Dick Harmon, Sheila Holden, and we'll go with Mark McLeod. And they will be followed by Rachel O'Keefe, Caitlin Dowdy, and Matt Glazewski.
And can I just do a time check to see where we are? I'm sorry, I know what time it is. There's a giant novelty clock in the back of the chamber. What I really meant was how many more people do we have after those six?
After this, 11.
11.
Sorry.
I think we've lost them.
So we're going to, we are going to lose a quorum.
Yeah, so let's be quick. So if somebody's already given the testimony you want to give, just say, I support that. And if there's new stuff you've got, say, here's the new stuff. And you don't need to thank us. We feel very, very well appreciated today. So you can cut that part out of your speech.
Especially Michael.
And we all know we love Michael. So with those wonderful prefaces, welcome back. Welcome back.
Why don't we, sorry, Sheila. What is Dick Harmon or Horman, Mark McLeod, or Rachel O'Keefe here? Then what is in Kate? Okay, then come on up. Oh, thank you.
Come on down.
Caitlin Dougherty, Doughty, or Matt Glazewski.
And there's tons of seats down
Come on
here.
up.
If people
Okay.
want to come
We've got our
down, you
next
can
three.
certainly just
And
come
we've
on
got-
down.
And after them, we've got a Steve Elder or Uder, Pam Stoser, Maya Jared, following these people.
Yeah, okay. Is that Maya up there? Yeah. Very good, she's here, good.
Okay. Well, since you said, everyone has said it already. My name is Sheila Holden. I'm with Pacific Power. I also have a letter here with me from OWAMI, the Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs, from Sam Brooks. I won't make mention of Michael, everyone has. I actually date my time back to when we helped start the Energy Office, which eventually Commissioner Salzman turned into the Sustainability and Planning Department. So I'm really proud of the work that has been done over the years and having been a part of it, both as an individual and as part of Pacific Power. The particular piece that I wanted to speak to today is the resolve that we were just discussing, and I'm not sure if you took a vote on it or not to take out the language. But the language that was in there with an including in the front of it, I think would really speak to why I had talked with some of the folks in the community and recommended it. Too often in the past, we've had issues where we've had laudable efforts that we were wanting to do within the community that is most vulnerable. And yet we don't have clear pathways in which we can be assured that they're going to be able to benefit, not just in the future, but right now. And some of the things that were mentioned are priorities within the Climate Action Plan. And so we wanted to mention those as things right now we can be doing in addition to working to find out ways that we can have more community-based solar or community-based renewables. A lot of those things that were listed are things that are going to be important to being able to actually do solar within those communities. Pacific Power has had the majority of the projects that are community-based with solar support come from our Blue Sky program. And a lot of them that you've taught at Mayor are from the support of the Blue Sky program. And the way the resolve was written could very well eliminate our ability to provide those kind of resources going forward, because it kind of looks like sounds like a mandate, and we need to have it to be open and more inclusive so that we can make sure we can continue to use the funds we've been using already.
Very good.
So
Thank
Sheila,
you, Commissioner
thank
Fish.
you for your testimony, and because I've been struggling with the language, even though we took a vote to delete the additional language, what you've done is put into the record the intent of the language that you sponsored, and I think actually to the extent that it is intended to expand opportunities in the equity sphere, not limit, I think you've made a clear point. That's now in the record, so thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Caitlin Dowdy. I work for a very small nonprofit that's focused on renewable energy in the Pacific Northwest. First, I'd like to thank you all for your work in preparing the Renewable Energy Resolution. Portland's continued leadership on climate issues and renewable energy is particularly relevant in light of our President's recent decision to withdraw from the Paris Agreement. It is important that we encourage the development of renewables such as wind and solar to decrease our dependence on energy that emits carbon and pollutants that impact human health. That said, we disagree with the inclusion of biomass in the Renewable Energy Resolution. If an urban utility is incentivized to use biomass to meet renewable standards, it will create a major, permanent, unsustainable demand stream for woody biomass at large facilities. This will undermine existing uses of small-scale biomass facilities that power schools and hospitals in rural Oregon. Biomass is not an appropriate feedstock for an urban utility. Of course, you've already moved an amendment, and we appreciate your inclusion of the language excluding biomass from public lands. And so I'd like to thank you, because you've already done that, but just wanted to state for the record
Very good. Thank you. We hope your arm gets well soon.
Thank you. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners. Thank you once again. In the interest of brevity, I will keep my redundant comments out of my testimony. My name is Mac Lazewski, and I live in North Portland. I'm also a credentialed public administrator, and I am a teacher at Portland Community College. I teach a course on global climate change. And one of the paramounts of the course, I actually like to say, is the uplifting part at the end, where I hold up our climate action plan, of which I'm very proud of, and to live in a city that has such a wonderful plan. And my comments, the new stuff is largely around public utilities and making sure a lot of this goes to Commissioner Fish and to the BES and to the Water Bureau. I work for the BES kind of sister agency in Clackamas County as my day job. And I think that it's important to take every opportunity to ensure that we take a lot of these important initiatives and fold them into our management of our public utilities. Taking every moment whenever there's a pipe that needs to be replaced, taking every chance to say that this can also go toward our renewable energy goals. And I might even suggest, as a matter of just general business for this commission, to put something onto your staff reports that might just say, how does this order of business in whatever thing that comes forward to this council, how does it support this very important initiative that you are considering today? And I think that might always keep this in the forefront of everyone's minds. For every time something comes forward, that you say, how does this move forward with our initiative? And that's it. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
That's a great suggestion, sir. Thank you. Like an impact statement.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next three are Akash Singh, Steve, I believe it's Elder, sorry, thank you, and Pam Stosser. Maya Jared. Thank you. And after them will be Julia Dufresne, James Valdez, and Chuck Johnson.
Very good. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Akash Singh, and I do air quality work and atmospheric chemistry modeling. And for the sake of efficiency and brevity, I would just like to say that I support this resolution and the appropriate amendments, especially in relation to biomass. I would just like to say, as a person of color, I would like to echo my support for sustainable, equitable infrastructure in marginalized neighborhoods. People of color have, are, and will continue to bear a disproportionate impact from the consequences of climate change. Going forward, I would recommend the implementation of these resolutions include the voices of marginalized communities and community organizations in order to correct decades of injustice. Thanks.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Elder. I'm a resident of Northeast Portland, and I'm here as an individual, and I would tell the council that I support the goals of the resolution, and I'd ask for just a couple of considerations. The American Council of Energy Efficient Enterprise has recently come out. It doesn't need to be over the next 20 or 30 years. Some things can be done now, can be done over the next year. A recent survey that they've published shows Portland being tied for 4th among cities using energy efficiency in the country, behind Seattle.
That makes us the third loser.
First was Boston, then was New York, then was Seattle.
You know how to hurt us. You know how to hurt us.
So there's something that can be worked upon right now. We can get one of these foam pads and say we're number 2 or we're number 3. And another thing is one of the earlier witnesses suggested that in Europe and in other countries there are requirements that new construction have incorporated renewable energy and energy efficient techniques. My family is right now the only one that I know of that's building a duplex in the 97211 area or zip code, which I walked up and down, and I see carbon guzzling excrescences being built all the time, gigabyte, monsters, houses that nobody can afford to live in. but they have no ceiling, I mean, no solar panels. They have minimum code insulation. This is something that it's not before the council today, but it's something that I wish the council would keep an open mind to. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Maya Jarrett. I'm a staff member at 350 PDX, but I'm on staycation, so I'm speaking as an individual today. I wanted to outline that today we've been talking about the goals of having a just transition to renewable energy, and I would like to articulate that for me, the goal is not a transition to renewable energy, but that we see renewable energy as a stepping stone to a justice-based, equitable, and safe climate society. And so those goals, to me, also include democratically controlled energy, distributed energy, and massively reducing energy use. So not just we want to move to renewable energy, but also let's look at what the real end game is. I really appreciate this resolution, and I also appreciate that you've put a number, 50%, on the workforce that you will be using to make this happen. 50% will be used, 50% of the workforce to make this happen will be put towards women-owned, minority-owned, and emergent businesses. That's amazing. I also would like to see a number defining the amount of investments put into the energy infrastructure actually located in those communities. There's a clause alluding to investments being placed in community-facing organizations, but we don't have a number or even a percentage that would be put towards that. So it would be really impressive if we could put 25 or 50%. And that would be investments in communities that right now are facing extreme violence and racism, and need support to help repair from the historical exploitation that's happened, and also the structural racism that's built into Oregon and Portland's political systems and social systems. Even as I came in the door today, I was told at bag check, "It's okay, we trust you." And this is not the experience that many of the people who've come to testify on racially charged issues have seen as they come into this building, or have just not been able to come into this building at all. So as we're putting a lot of effort into equity in our climate policies, let's think about also what conversations are we excluding the people that we're writing into this policy from having here at City Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Was there a Pam Stosser? Okay. Then we'll go with Julia Dufresne. I believe James Valdez already spoke. Okay, thanks. Chuck Johnson and Jim Howell. Here comes. And then the last two I have after Mr. Howell will be Susan Monson and Katie Gould.
All right. Thank you so much for this opportunity to testify. My name is Julia DeGraw, and I am the Northwest organizer with Food and Water Watch. We're an organization that is working to create and protect a safe food system and clean and public water for all. And here in Oregon, we have a list, or a group of supporters that's around 30,000, and I think a good portion of that's in the Portland area, but I don't have the exact number today. We support 100% renewables by the year 2035 because we recognize that all of the work that we do to protect these essential resources is all for naught if we can't get it right with climate change. So it's really exciting to see the city of Portland leading the way, and especially with the goal of getting 100% renewable for the energy provided to the community by 2035, meeting that standard. We're really excited about that. We also support the amendments that have been passed today, although we would like to see just a clear exemption on biomass, because I think there's a little too much wiggle room in there. But aside from that, I just want to say that, you know, in Trump's America, it's really up to the localities and municipalities to take the lead on these issues. And it's really exciting to see the community involvement that you've used to get to this point. And we really encourage you to continue to look at this through an equity and environmental justice lens and continue working with these groups as you implement this policy, because, as it was said earlier, the devil's always in the details and in the implementation, and we're really hoping that you can continue to engage the community as you move forward.
Well
Thank
said.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Chuck Johnson. I'm the Director of the Nuclear Power Task Force for Oregon and Washington Physicians for Social Responsibility, and I'm a member of the U.S. Department of Energy's Hanford Advisory Board. Together with Multnomah County and our state and local partners throughout the United States and the competitive market itself, we are accomplishing the remarkable feat with this resolution and the good work that you're doing of rendering President Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Treaty functionally irrelevant. Thank you also for including nuclear power on the list of non-renewable resources. Increasingly, due to the safety and cost considerations, nuclear power is receding into the past. It remains illegal to build nuclear power plants in Oregon due to public vote in 1980, requiring a permanent nuclear waste repository for the lethal waste created by nuclear power plants. The price of wind, solar, conservation, battery backup is coming down so rapidly that Robert McCullough and McCullough Research economics firm estimate that we can use them to affordably replace the 33-year-old nuclear power plant still operating in the Northwest, the Columbia Generating Station, a Fukushima-style GE boiling water reactor, formerly known as Washington Public Power Supply System number 2, or WUPS 2, on the Hanford Nuclear Reservation along the Columbia River. The Seattle City Council and Mayor unanimously last year voted for a phase-out of the CGS nuclear plant and carbon-free replacement, which is significant because their municipal utility is one of the is on the board of Energy Northwest, which governs that nuclear plant. And we appreciate you recognizing this in your, although tangentially in your resolution. Returning to the resolution again, thank you for supporting it, and I would add one last little joke that I heard probably first in 1970 about fusion energy, which is it's the energy of the future and always will be, or it's 20 years off and always will be. If it did come to pass, I think you're right, Commissioner Saltzman, that we would want to revisit and consider it. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler. My name is Jim Howell. I represent Aorta Association Oregon Rail and Transit Advocates. We support the goals of this resolution. What I'd like to speak briefly about is the inconsistency of the city of Portland between its climate action plan and its transportation plan. In a transportation plan that you've adopted, you've included a $500 million freeway expansion in the heart of the city, and also included over $1 billion worth of freeways in the region. And we consider any freeway expansion as being, it basically attracts more automobiles, more traffic, and more pollution, and therefore it's inconsistent with this goal. And we would like you to reconsider your support of the Regional Transportation Plan, which is such a highway-oriented plan.
Thank you, sir. Valid point. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
And the last.
Good afternoon, Carla. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. I'm losing my mind, apparently. Next three, please.
I show the last two signed up
Last
are
two, good.
Susan Munson and Katie Gould. Oh, I'm sorry, Rachel. Yes, and Rachel was called earlier. Sorry.
Very good. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Rachel O'Keefe. I'm giving testimony on behalf of myself as well as all of those in my generation that are concerned about climate change and its effect on our planet and our lives. I support the amendment made to exclude energy derived from fossil fuels, nuclear waste incineration, and especially biomass feedstocks from federal and state lands. Not only do we need to move towards 100% renewable energy by 2050, we need to protect our national forests. They are a carbon reserve and an important part of the Pacific Northwest identity. And the exclusion of biomass from public lands is a great step towards making our national forests officially protected as carbon sequestration areas. We've heard a lot of testimony from people of many ages today, and I want to say, as a person in their 20s, not representing any organization, but just as a concerned individual for my future and my children's future, that I want to thank you for making Portland a national leader in building a clean energy future. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm Katie Gould, and I'm concerned that most of the language in this resolution is specific to electricity, despite the fact that transportation is the largest source of fossil fuel emissions in Multnomah County. As you know, statewide, we're not seeing emission reductions anymore from 2015 or 2014 to 15. The latest year we have data, we increased 6% overall, with the majority of that increase, 60%, coming from transportation. Unlike utilities, our transportation choices are deeply ingrained into our daily routines, our personal finances, and our emotions. Major changes in our transportation system come at a high political risk, as long as parking and congestion are top citizen complaints. I urge you to set intermediate milestones specific to transportation along the way to 2050 to ensure we're on track, and/or a moratorium on new transportation infrastructure that is projected to increase our emissions. 33 years is too many to be able to wait for an easier year, another legislative session, or a future technology. Shifting our transportation planning from optimizing for vehicle throughput to emission reduction will not be met without great difficulty or resistance from both citizens and transportation agencies alike. We need as many tools as possible in this resolution to support this council and future leaders of Portland to make these hard changes to see these goals through.
Thank you. And perfectly timed. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Monson, and I am reading testimony for Deborah Romarin. She writes, she's a Portland business owner. She writes, I just finished a college course on the science of climate change and paleoclimatology, and I'd like to share a few facts. Over the past 600 million years, there have been 6 major extinctions. We all know about the meteor-driven dinosaur extinction, but the other 5 have been caused by climate changes brought about by natural shifts like those to the Earth's orbit, the Earth's tilt, and its wobble. But those huge climatic changes, which resulted in mass extinctions, took place over hundreds of thousands of years. Today, since the Industrial Revolution, we are altering the Earth's climate 5,000 times faster than the pace of the most natural warming period in our planet's past. Read ever. There is nothing natural about the altering of our climate today. Here's the takeaway. It's us. We all know it's us. We humans, with our fossil fuels, are doing in a flash what it takes Mother Nature many millennia to do. The last time CO2 was at today's level of 407 parts per million, humans did not even exist. In the past 800,000 years, a period for which scientists have ice core records, methane naturally varied from 350 to 800 parts per billion. This year, methane topped a whopping 2,500 parts per billion. According to NASA, our average temperature has increased 2 degrees Fahrenheit during the modern era, but did you know that even if greenhouse gases were stabilized right now, the climate will still warm another 1.1 degree Fahrenheit? It's baked in the cake. While others dither and engage in counterfeit debates about the climate, Portland has been singular in its past willingness to take action to move us off fossil fuels. Today, we can join with Aspen, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Santa Barbara, Ithaca, New York, Georgetown, Texas, and other cities across the U.S. to join the 100% Renewable Energy Club. Let's be one of the leaders once again, and I'm sure she would. Thank you.
And Michael.
And Michael.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Mayor, I have an amendment I'd like to offer.
I just want to make clear, is that the end of public testimony now?
That's all who were
Very
able
good.
to sign up.
Okay, Commissioner Saltzman.
Yeah, I think we just heard some testimony. I think Mr. Wozniak, maybe, I thought he had a good suggestion that every city, and so my amendment would say that all city impact statements accompanying a resolution or an ordinance should discuss how they contribute to the 100% renewable energy goal.
Second.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Saltzman, a second from Commissioner Fish.
That would be resolved at the end, I guess.
Any further discussion on this item?
I like it.
I think it's great. Call the roll. I won't tell you how I'm going to vote till I get to it, though. Call the roll.
Fish.
I'm still not telling you how I'm going to vote. No, aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Very common sense amendment. Thank you for
Mayor,
offering
let's,
it up.
let's take
Commissioner
up
Fish.
Dan has an amendment that hasn't been voted on.
So
and then I
Commissioner
have another one.
Saltzman moved, I seconded it for the purposes of discussion. It was regarding the renewable energy, hydro, wind, solar, geothermal, biogas, ocean, motion.
Hydrogen,
energy.
yeah,
Thank you.
hydrogen in there somewhere.
Yes, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know if you want to have further discussion on that point.
Well, I would just say that several people have noticed that transportation accounts for 40% of our fuel consumption. Hydrogen has one of the best promises to transition fossil fuel consumption in our transportation sector to a renewable resource. And in fact, Honda and Toyota are presently marketing hydrogen-fueled vehicles in California, and they're looking at New England as well. And it may be imperfect, derived from a natural gas feedstock base, and I'm fine with disqualifying on that assumption, but I think for us to totally eliminate hydrogen power as a source of renewable energy, I think is really missing the boat in terms of the best potential we have to back out fossil fuel transportation fuels.
Commissioner Udaly?
I'm hesitant to adopt this language just because of all the work that went into writing this ordinance and wanting to make sure we have feedback from the community and from the stakeholders. However, if we do move ahead with this vote, I'd like to suggest that if we're going to add hydrogen to the list of renewables, then we should add language in the exclusion list that says hydrogen produced from fossil fuels would be excluded.
I'd be fine with that.
Would you accept that as an amendment to?
Yes.
Okay, and
That's a friendly amendment.
that is a friendly amendment, and.
So let's just vote on it.
Very good. There's no objection to it. Please call the roll.
Fish.
Dan, I appreciate you raising this, but I think it's out of sequence, and so I'm going to vote no.
Saltzman.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by out of sequence, but I thought that the city council is part of the proper sequence, even though we come last in the process. I still thought we were part of the sequence, so I do feel this fits in, and indeed it is a renewable fuel, and it's something that we should not be overlooking, particularly because its contribution to reducing fossil fuels in the transportation sector is significant. And I think with Commissioner Udaly's parallel amendment, saying that we will not support it from a fossil fuel derived source, even makes it better, cleaner even. So I vote aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The amendment is accepted.
Mayor, I
Commissioner
have
Fish?
an additional amendment, which I want to, we have some language in the resolution around workforce training and equity, but we don't have clear language about high road standards, so I want to offer this amendment. Be it further resolved, city projects and procurements under this proposal will use proven policies to ensure the jobs created are high-quality, family wage jobs that meet our high standards of workforce inclusion for women and communities of color.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Fish moves, Commissioner Udaly seconds. Any further discussion?
I'll just say that this is, the intent of this is to restate our high road standards for jobs and make clear that we're talking about family wage jobs.
Appreciated. Please call the roll.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The amendment is adopted.
Mayor, one last
Commissioner
item,
Fish.
more like housekeeping. I was keeping track, well, let's break for dinner and we'll come back, Commissioner. So our friends from the Oregon Environmental Council raised a couple of issues. I think since they're in the record, I believe they're more in the nature of implementation issues than amendments, so I won't offer them, but they're in the record, and I think with respect to standards with TriMet and other things, I think we should look to those as issues to be taken up with implementation. So with that, I have no further amendments.
Noted. Thank you. Colleagues, any further amendments? Colleagues, I've been asked to read a statement from Commissioner Fritz. Unfortunately, the hearing on this important, this is from City Commissioner Amanda Fritz. Unfortunately, the hearing on this important issue is scheduled for a date on which I had previously notified the council clerk that I will be out of town on vacation with my daughter. Support of clean, renewable energy has been a core principle for me in every term I've served on the council. I was the council leader on opposing coal trains during Mayor Adams' administration. I gained council support for a similar resolution on oil trains, and I partnered with Mayor Hills in the successful council ordinance banning the expansion of fossil fuel facilities in Portland. I also helped to defeat the proposed Pembina propane terminal proposal. Especially in light of the reckless actions of the federal government today, I will continue advocating for the principle of saving our planet. I strongly support this latest City Council resolution, and I thank my colleagues on the Council and our community partners for once again setting Portland on the right course of action. And I'm sure if she were here, she'd also add in, thank you, Michael. So, colleagues, and for those of you watching, what we have now done is we have adopted a series of amendments to the substitute resolution. And what we will now do is take up the main motion, in other words, the substitute resolution as amended. Is there any further discussion, comments, questions on the main motion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Fish?
Well, I want to begin by thanking Mayor Wheeler and Commissioner Udaley for the leadership they took to bring this resolution to council, and I'm proud to join my friend and colleague Dan Saltzman in co-sponsoring it. And I want to also acknowledge the work of your Jamie, and who worked tirelessly on this, and also Nathan from the mayor's office, who was in the point. On my team, Jamie Dunphy and Amira Streeter. I want to thank them for the work that they did. You know, I wish, Mayor, that every time this administration takes an action which moves us backward, we could have the foresight.
You don't mean my administration, do you?
The federal administration.
Very good, thank you. Just being clear.
That's a friendly amendment. I wish every time the federal administration took us backward, we had the foresight to have on the day of an announcement something positive on the council agenda to counter it. I fear, however, we would not get any other work done if we were just matching up all the bad things that they're doing. But there is something richly symbolic about on the very day that this announcement was made, an announcement which the president thought was so important. He held a press conference in the Rose Garden, a place that's usually reserved for the most important announcements of an administration. But nonetheless, that we are on this very day able to take up this resolution. So I'm pleased that we are doing this. I'm very proud to support this resolution, and we had some testimony about the role that the public utilities can take in advancing this agenda. And I think if the mayor decides to reassign the public utilities to me, I will take that charge very seriously. And there's enormous opportunities with our public utilities, from land that we can put more solar facilities to engaging hydropower to at the dam. To continuing with our ambitious agenda to turn poop into power. And someone said we should expand on it, so I would just ask you to go to the bathroom more frequently, and that, I think, is one way we'll get there. But the utilities do have a significant role to play. Michael Armstrong, everybody has noted, since you've announced your departure, what a pleasure it has been to work with you. I'll just add a personal note. When I got on the council and when we started to deal with some of these very forward-looking initiatives, as a new member of the council, I felt I needed additional coaching to make sure I understood the issue and the context, and sort of like a boot camp. And you spent a lot of time in my office helping me to understand these policies and why they're important, and to deepen my understanding. And for that, I'm extremely grateful, because I know that I'm not alone. You've done that in this community, helping to explain and advance this agenda, so I appreciate that. In 2050, I will be 91 years old, and I'm going to make a bold prediction. I will not be serving on this council. But maybe, just maybe, my grandchild will, or a grandchild will. And I think what we're doing today is going to pave the way for a clean energy future and a much brighter future for my grandchildren, and for that I'm extremely grateful. Thank you. Aye.
Saltzman?
Portland has a proud history of setting the standard on how to integrate the city's built and natural environments and how we can further sustainability in that regard. This was the premise of the Office of Sustainable Development, which I brought forward for council approval in 2001. And it's now become the Office of Sustainability, or the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. But it started Portland's commitment to renewable energy in a serious manner back then, as well as green building policy. And I want to thank Michael Armstrong, because he was really at the core of that work, even way back then, in helping provide Portland with its international reputation as a leader. And I think he also brings an uncanny ability to make people respect his viewpoints, because I think he approaches them in a very rational, unbiased manner. He reaches, I think, the right conclusions often in terms of sustainability policy, but he does it in a way that is reassuring to people, even if they may disagree with him or us in our particular position. So again, thank you, Michael, for all you've done. This resolution represents a core value of Portlanders and furthers our commitment to live as lightly on the land as possible. I'm proud to support it and state my appreciation for all of the organizations and advocates that participated in its creation. Thank you especially to Mayor Wheeler and Commissioner Udaly and your staffs for your leadership in putting this all together. Aye.
Udaly?
This is the peril of going third every time. They always beat me to the punch, but I have some prepared remarks today, which is rare, so just so I don't forget anything. So today I'm proud to be part of this moment in Portland's history when we clearly and firmly articulated our vision of a healthy future for generations to come. Much of this resolution requires that we be creative, reach beyond what is immediately possible, and stay in touch with the latest and greatest developments in environmental technology. I'm excited about what Portland might be like in about 30 years when I will be, oh gosh.
Don't say it. Stop bragging.
35.
Stop showing off.
40?
You made your point. You made your point. You'll be eligible for a driver's license, just to put it that way.
The engagement process on this resolution was robust, which is clear in how strong and thorough it has become, and I think it's even stronger after hearing from our community and deliberating with my colleagues, so I'm thrilled about that. I am proud that not only did we engage environmental advocacy organizations, but also organizations representing Native Americans and other communities of color and the environmental justice movement. This resolution is a reflection of the ways in which we recognize marginalized communities the fact that marginalized communities have been ignored or negatively impacted in the past, and our commitment to breaking that cycle moving forward. I am also encouraged that the utilities companies came to the table and worked with our staff to find a path forward that holds our vision firm, yet allows enough flexibility to achieve true renewable power at rates everyone can afford. I want to recognize that in light of this resolution and the city's commitment to renewable energy, PGE has ended its plans to build 2 new natural gas power plants. We'll take some, yeah. I call that a win already, and I thank them for recognizing that the time to be bold and visionary about our future energy sources is now. I want to thank my staff who helped lead the charge and has been working on this for months now. I especially want to thank Nicholas Caleb, who is here today, and making an ugly face at me for some reason. Oh, sorry, that was a smile. Who we brought in just for this purpose to work on this piece of policy, and who's responsible for the original draft in partnership with Nathan Howard from the mayor's office. Nathan's hiding behind a pillar back there, I think. Yeah. We truly enjoyed working with him and appreciate the passion and dedication to the environment he brought to our office. Because of his work and advocacy, we are committed to forming an environmental policy advisory team that will work with our office to hold our feet to the fire and keep us moving in the right direction. This is a sad day for our country, seeing as our president has decided to withdraw us from the Paris Accord. It's also a scary day for our planet with the news that an iceberg the size of the state of Delaware is about to break off. But this is a great moment for Portland, and we sure needed one this week. I'm honored to be a part of it. Aye.
Wheeler.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank my colleagues. As per usual, it's always a privilege to work with you. I want to thank all of our staffs who worked so well and collaboratively together on this. Nathan, thank you. You've been working on this and iterations of this and you and Nick started really working on this together months and months and months ago. And I want to thank you for that. I want to thank the many, many people in the community who advised all of us up here. And I want to be clear to acknowledge the people who came to the microphone today. A lot of people from the community spent a lot of time and energy helping us to draft this substitute resolution. I'm told this is one of the longest resolutions ever adopted in the history of the city. But I think it is worthy of that title. I also want to acknowledge the young people who took the time to come here today and speak. And some of you may have noticed a small child wander into the room, look bored, turn around and leave. That would have been my daughter. And I think about her and what this means for her and her contemporaries in the years ahead. What we're doing today, it's fun, it's interesting, it's exciting. I hope Bob Salinger believes we lived up to the heights of inspirational. But let's be honest with ourselves. The hard work is ahead. Drafting this was hard, coming up with the ideas in it, agreeing to the standards, building the coalition, but the hard work is actually the heavy lifting that comes with implementation, and that's going to come with time. That being said, I am so glad that we were able to get this done. This has been truly one of the hardest weeks in this city's history. And I hope that people will look back on this and say, in the middle of one of the hardest weeks in this city's history, we did something great. And I think it's just even more magnified by the fact, as my fellow commissioners had said, it's happening on the very same day that the United States is effectively turning its back on the rest of the world and their decision to continue to go forward with the climate accords in Paris. This will serve as a beacon of hope. And believe me, the world's read all about us this week. They're going to read about us again tomorrow. And I think they're going to be incredibly pleased with what they read about the people of Portland, Oregon, who lead not only in tremendously courageous and bold ways, but they lead with a view to the future of this planet. And I think that's the best thing about this. So obviously, I vote aye. The substitute resolution as amended is adopted, and we are adjourned.